without further ado, I think we just need to get absolutely straight into it with tonight's show with our prepping for SHTF, part of my SHTF survival scenarios by Single Prepper. We like to keep it fresh. And of course, right now we're talking the Warzone Wednesday. It is psychological and information warfare is what we're going to be talking about tonight. By the end of tonight's show, you're going to be questioning everything, right? Now, I've talked about virtually all of these things in their own individual sort of components over the years many times, but this is one of the first times I've really put this whole thing together. I've done so many live shows on other channels over the last 20 years doing this. Particularly this topic. So this is an interesting one for me, and I hope it's going to be a really interesting one for you. But it is a monster, and it's a complex one. It's one that requires concentration. It's one that requires, focus. Oh, look at Sandy and there with the twos from the super chat. Thank you so much, my darling. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being part of the Wolfpack. And any and all super chats tonight, absolutely welcome. Thank you, Sandy. I really appreciate that. You'll peer up the board here, and it's the only way I can stay alive as it is at the moment. Thank you so much to Sandy. I really appreciate you supporting the channel. Literally, no full-time job, no nothing. This is just me and you doing our thing. Let me give that one a love quickly so I can show my appreciation. Everything helps. So thank you so very much. And again, birthday wishes to my absolute beautiful daily survival. So glad you can be with us tonight. So, let's get through it then, shall we? So just for those that are new here, we're going to gloss through these slides. These are just the main ones. Modern Western societies, because it's like, why do we even need to prepare in the first place? Of course, we are on a knife edge right now. Self-reliance at an all-time low compared to our ancestors 100 years ago. Everyone knew how to raise goats. Everyone knew how to raise chickens. Nowadays, no one knows about. So, we're all at far greater risk than we ever have been before. Resources stretched to the max. We've got populations that are to the max. We've got crime and everything on the rise. We've got, we don't need to get into it. Pause this screen if you want to know why you should listen to me and why I know what I'm talking about or not. Types of warfare tactics then. Slide 5 out of 82. Right, types of warfare tactics. So we've broken it down into conventional warfare, 4th dimensional and 5th dimensional warfare tactics. So we're going to gloss through these as well because we went over these over the last few weeks, but it's just for those that are new here. So conventional warfare refers to organized state-led military conflict, the traditional kind of stuff you expect to see, things like the, organized state actors, standard weaponry, artillery, ships, aircraft and stuff, right? Typical rules of engagement that are governed by things like Geneva Conventions, right? So, and it includes these types of things as part of the conventional warfare tactics, right? So then the 4th dimensional warfare tactics gets a little bit more shady. We're talking about unconventional and asymmetric tactics designed to disrupt, outmaneuver, or weaken traditional military forces, right? So this is like, Taliban type stuff, guerrilla warfare and things like they experienced in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so on, right? So these are the sort of things that describe 4th dimensional, unconventional tactics, asymmetry and power. So you can have a small group taking on massive nations. Focus on weaknesses. So it's all about finding the vulnerabilities, whether that's supply chains, economics, infrastructure, things like this. And so it's very strategic indeed. And it includes all of these types of things, even down to space warfare, physical, taking satellites out and things. Proxy warfare, we've got that going on right now all around the world. Sabotage, we've had that loads of times as well. So it's all, you've got to ask yourself the question as we go through, which of these are you seeing already rocking about in everyday life? So fifth dimensional warfare tactics are including even slightly more shadier stuff. So this extends beyond the physical battlefield to targeting like mindset perceptions and, cultural divisions and things like this, and manipulating information and stuff like this, propaganda. This is very much what we're going to be talking about tonight, right? So it's to do with disrupting the critical systems and, as it says, without the need for any physical confrontation. We're in the realm of the mutually assured destruction treaties and things, or understandings, and so there's no like declaring war on a country anymore. You've got to do it snidely and covertly, which is where these sorts of things come in, right? So these are the sort of things that would describe a fifth dimensional warfare tactics, stuff that's indirect engagement. So like I say, it's not like, calling someone out directly. That's all about shadiness. It's a global reach. It's not like, you know, fighting over borders. This is via cyber warfare and stuff like this, extended beyond borders and things, right? And of course the psychological impact, again, of which we're going to be talking about tonight, because it's super powerful stuff, and this is the stuff that's in play right now. So economic warfare, cyber warfare, psychological warfare, we're going to be talking about information warfare, we're going to be talking about space warfare, non-physical, and then we've got weather wars, drone warfare, cultural warfare, which we'll be talking about. And so basically these are the three here that we're going to be focusing on tonight. Of course, we've done the drone warfare on episode 2, I believe it was, and the EMP, was it number 2 or number 3? And then the electromagnetic warfare we did on the last episode, episode 4. So if you want to catch up on that after this show, then you'll see the link in the description of this video to the podcast, which has got all episodes on there, including this one. So yes, indeed, psychological and information warfare is what we will be talking about tonight. And so this is the topic, and I'm not sure, is Full of Hope in the house? New one, hello my darling, great to see you. I'll just have a quick look at the screen. New to preppers, I'm living in the UK, so I thought I'd prepare him for an unknown future. Any tips where I can start as a beginner? Hey Anne, you can start right here tonight with me, right? And then what I'd highly recommend after that is jumping over to my channel, and pretty much, right, if you go down here, you'll see one, the grid down scenarios are good, but to be honest, you want the advanced principles of prepping, right? And perhaps Daily Survival can give you the link to that in the live chat, so you can keep it for later. If you join the Discord server, because that's a great place to start, and that way you don't make any mistakes. The advanced principles of survival, the advanced principles of prepping, sorry, you'll see it on my channel as a live. So here we go then, Warzone Wednesday, psychological and information warfare. And of course with Sigma Prepper, it's all about a more strategic approach to preparedness is how we do. Before we go into the guts of it, love, peace and progress to the pack. Thank you everyone for being with me. It was a lovely show last night. Lovely to get together on the campfire catch up. What an absolute epic time that was. I really enjoyed it. So did everyone else. Thank you for being there. Thank you to those that are here tonight. Love to you all. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much to Sandy as well for the super chat. And don't forget, happy birthday to Daily Survival, my absolute beaut, moderator of all moderators and chief of security. She's my Pepper Potts. You'd have to ask her if I'm her Iron Man or not. So here we go then. We're getting into it. Right. So basically what we're talking about here is breaking down these into 6 categories. This is how I've done it in my book, The Ultimate Guide to Prepping. Just a quick note on that as well. Of course, I released to the VIP Patreon members and the YouTube VIP members. You can hit the join button to join from as little as like 10 cents a day or something ludicrous, but it's like a cup of coffee a month. But I released this, which is my winter prepping guide, which is now free for the VIPs. So go and get it downloaded. You'll see in the post. You'll see the post in the description. In the memberships tab, right? And if you're a Patreon member, you'll see the post on there, and you'll get all this 42 pages worth of information. There's also some chapter previews from my ultimate prepping guide, which is 400 pages. You've got your tick box list as well, so you can keep track of what you've got, what you haven't got. And I literally released this to the public yesterday. So yeah, I've got a chapter preview here from my ultimate prepping guide, which is surviving natural disasters, and I've included the blizzards and ice storms as part of this winter prepping guide. So this is a snapshot of what, you know, just the blizzards and ice storms out of the one out of the 12 natural disasters, right? So you've got all that included as well. And of course, also we've got the SHDF intel sources, where I give you all the sources to keep your eye on the weather and what's going on as well, live and things. And so, yeah, definitely get that one caught up. It's well worth a look. And of course, if you are a member, it's cheap and a Patreon member, you'll have access to that straight away. Go and check it out. So here we go then. Psychological and information warfare. I've broken down into 6 categories. As I say, these Warzone Wednesdays is all part of my How to Survive World War 3 chapter of the book that will be launching in a month or so. So this is actually quite a large topic that I've tried to scale back in my book, right? And it's difficult because it's so important. And the reason I'm doing this and the reason this is 80 slides is because of how important each one of these things is. And what I need you to do is to be, as we're going through, I need you to ask yourself the question, where have I heard this before? Where does this sound familiar? Have I experienced this? Is this what the mainstream media is doing to me? Is this what the government's doing to me? You see? This is what we need to be asking ourselves. And by doing that and by identifying it, we're actually helping to survive it. So as things are rolled out onto people and as wartime gets closer and closer, the first thing lost is the truth. And this is why, is because these are massive, massive and epic fifth dimensional warfare tactics. The psychological and information warfare is a great way for militaries to circumvent typical conventional warfare and declarations of war and things. It's very sneaky, and you'll find that even governments are doing it to their own citizens as well as neighbors and enemy populations as well, right? So this is really important stuff. So what you see here is the numbers on the end, so deception and covert subversion 8. That means that even that is broken down into 8 tactics that are used within these categories, right? So this is how messy this is how messy this topic is, right? And I've got an entire chapter in my book, Mental Mastery, that includes things like, group dynamics and mind, where people get in large groups, they go a bit crazy, right? So I've got a whole thing talking about that. It's fascinating, how to survive civil war, right? Anyway, so shaping and public perception, there's 8 tactics included in that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these, right? And break down each of the tactics within that category of psychological information warfare tactics, right? I hope you're following, right? Strap in. Now, we'll go through the first 3, and then we'll have a 5-minute tea break like we normally would at the halfway point, and then we'll come back, and then we'll go through the next 3 after that, right? And that's the plan. So this is how we're going to do it. So let's get straight into it then. We're shaping public perception, and we'll just see how we go as we go through, right? So, first one, shaping public perception type tactics is how I've organized this, right? So, we're going to break this down into the 8 things that make up shaping public perception, right? And the tactics used. So, propaganda, right? Deliberate messaging to influence public opinion. We're all familiar with that, right? What we're going to do, though, is I'm just going to give you a brief of what it includes, and then we'll go into propaganda in more detail, into narrative framing more detail, and so on. You with me? So that's how we're going to do it. So narrative framing, selectively presenting facts to support a desired interpretation, perception management, long-term strategies to mold public opinion on key issues. Everyone's going to be knowing that they've experienced all of these in some way or another, and it's really good to be able to understand what they're called, what they are, and how they're used against you. That will already prepare you for it, right? And help you to survive it. So, astroturfing, I've talked about that quite a lot over the years. Fake grassroots movements to stimulate public support. And then the other 4 here, so false consensus engineering is one we'll look at, creating the illusion that the majority supports a certain narrative, right? It's like people used to use the term astroturfing for false consensus engineering. They are very similar, but we'll break down the differences in the next few slides. So media capture. I'm going to, again, please do share this on your social media with your friends and family, because believe me, YouTube's not putting it out to anyone. They're removing about 30% of my subscribers every day, right? Or should I say, as many as subscribe, 30% are removed every time, right? So bear that in mind. You need to do the bell notifications to all, because I'm experiencing one of the things on one of these lists that I'll talk about when we get to it, right? And I'll show you what we're talking about. So cultural media capture, controlling mainstream media to filter or amplify specific narratives, cultural warfare, undermining shared values or institutions to weaken social cohesion. Absolutely epically going on right now. Censorship and gatekeeping. Suppressing dissenting voices or controlling access to information, right? So these are the 8 sort of main tactics that are used within the shaping public perception sphere of psychological and information warfare, right? By the way, if you want to get my attention in the chat, the only way to do it is a super chat, by the way. So that's the way we'll do it tonight. Love to you all. So here we go then. Let's bust them down. First one, don't forget, was propaganda. So we'll get into more detail on each one, right? And we'll talk about examples and things like that in the chat, yeah? So the definition, the deliberate dissemination of information, true, false, or exaggerated, to influence opinions, beliefs, and actions. So I gave an example of this actually a few weeks ago. We were talking about propaganda, and I was talking about World War II when there was the British government had put some propaganda into newspapers with a report saying about how the British pilots were able to see in the dark by eating carrots, right? By eating lots of carrots. And so everyone started eating carrots thinking it's going to make them see in the dark, but it wasn't. It was complete propaganda. It was, you know, to influence opinions, right, as it says, of the Germans, because they couldn't, we had invented the radar. And the Germans hadn't figured out we'd invented the radar, so they didn't work out how we could see seemingly see their planes all the time. So we had to have plausible deniability from a military point of view as to how we could always detect when their stuff's come in, right? So they put these stories out in our own newspapers in the UK, talking about the pilots eating carrots, helping them see in the dark. And the Germans are like, oh, that must be how they're seeing our stuff coming. Do you know what I mean? So classic example there, right? So the execution methods include emotional appeals, so messages that invoke fear, hope, or anger. You know, it's always about the children. It's always about the children. You know, think about the shootings and things that you've seen, and they always put it on the heartstrings by talking about the kids, and so on. Symbols and slogans, use of simple, memorable imagery or phrases to reinforce ideas, e.g. keep calm and carry on, you know, another great British wartime thing that was pushed out. So repetition, broadcasting the same message repeatedly across media platforms to make it seem credible. We see that quite a lot, where literally it's just duplicated across all the mainstream, and it's just quite obvious. If you always know, it's essentially, this is one of the giveaways of propaganda, is the fact that you'll see it on every news station, CNBC, CNN, BBC, AP, right? It's like a marketing incest. I was a business consultant for many years, and there's a thing called marketing incest, which is essentially the same type of thing as what the governments do through mainstream media. So one of the other tactics in shaping public perception is the narrative framing. And this is really important because you see this all of the time. This is about how, you know, I've talked about this before. I gave an example of how, like literally, if the mainstream media only talked badly about ginger-haired people every day, selectively, because they just researched around the world to find any news story around the world that day that was to do with someone who's a redhead who's done something bad, right? Believe me, if all you saw on the news was like redheaded people doing bad stuff, right, your perception, do you know what I mean? It's like really easy. Selectively presenting information to direct how an event or policy is interpreted, right? So positive framing, highlighting successes while ignoring failures, yeah? I mean, you know, every time you do a search for Trump, it always comes up with the negative stories about what's going on with him. When you search for Hillary Clinton or Biden, it's always the positive stuff going on. Do you know what I mean? Classic narrative framing, right? Negative framing, focusing on opponents' weaknesses while omitting the strengths. Cherry picking the facts, yeah? Presenting selective data to support a specific conclusion. You see that all the time, right? Now, bear in mind, these positive framing, negative framing, these are all tactics in themselves under the narrative framing tactic, which is part of the shaping public perception tactic of, or strategy of, the psychological and information warfare tactics. It's just like, this is how deep it goes, right? And you know me, I like detail and depth, right? So if you want like 30-second TikToks, then sorry, you're in the wrong place, right? So next one up then is perception management. Now, a lot of people, no, I've used this expression a lot of time when we talk about perception management, right? Because this is so important. This is so important. Now, this is something that happens. This isn't like, oh, you'll just see a news story or make you perceive, you know, something differently and stuff. This is like, goes over a long period of time. This is like a grooming level of mind manipulation, right? So long-term strategy to influence how individuals or groups perceive an entity, policy, or event. I mean, you could throw an example out there with things like EVs, right? I mean, look at all the news stories that are pushed out there positively about EVs, and the news stories that are pushed out there negatively about internal combustion engines, because it suits that agenda, and that narrative and that perception is being managed of EVs, that they're good. Do you know what I mean? Same thing. So again, controlling information flow, suppressing or amplifying specific narratives, creating symbolic actions, public stunts or events designed to reinforce a message, e.g. leaders visiting disaster zones for PR, or things like matey girl, how dare you, getting arrested every 10 minutes, right? Psychological priming, conditioning the public to associate certain emotions with specific ideas, e.g. freedoms versus tyranny. You know? Oh, sorry. So number 4 then was astroturfing. Now, again, as I say, a lot of people confuse this with consensus engineering, which is up next. Because essentially the way astroturfing as well is actually part of a business sales and marketing methodology, which is about the grass is greener on the other side, right? Everyone's heard that expression of the grass is greener on the other side, right? So that's the idea of astroturfing. The grass looks great on the other side, but it's fucking fake, right? But you're not supposed to know that. So astroturfing, it's interesting. I just brought up on the last one, we were talking about perception management, and I was talking about, you know, how dare you, matey girl, yeah? I don't know why I can't remember her name. Live in the chat, they're going to be telling me, screaming out what her name is. Hopefully somewhere is going to be helping me with her name. Why can't I think of her? The climate change girl. But you know who I'm talking about. Now, this is classic. So it's basically creating a fake grassroots movement to simulate widespread support for a cause or policy. So like the climate change thing with Greta Thunberg. I knew it would come to me. Thank you to those who have tried in the chat. And please do vote in the live chat as well. And hit the like button if you're enjoying it so far. So execution methods then, hiring paid actors or activists. This is like crisis actors and stuff, right? People posing as concerned citizens to attend rallies or events. Loads of claims of that going on as certain things. Fake social media accounts, bots or accounts amplifying a narrative to make it trend. And again, this is like the, you want what the other person's got. You want to fit in with everyone. If you think everyone else is thinking a certain way, then, you know, you'll be... And that's part of consensus engineering, which is where I'm trying to separate the two, right? And so astroturfing is more looking like it's a grassroots thing, but it's not. It's actually up the back door, if you know what I mean, right? With somebody who's a paid actor who's paid by the government or something like that, or an agency. So that includes stuff like front organisations, corporations, funding advocacy groups to push their agenda, right? Absolutely seeing that wild going on all the time, right? So here we go. This is where we can break down the false consensus engineering. This is different from astroturfing, right? So this is creating the illusion that most people agree with specific idea policy. So this is about conformity. If you've seen the ASH conformity experiment, ASCH off the top of my head, conformity experiment. It's the same thing, right? You know, they go around. And they've got strips. I think the original experiment was length of strips. I'll check out Telded Boy. Check it out with the super chat from Telded Boy. £49.99 foldable sheets. Whoosh. In fact, I think £49.99 could even be rollable sheets. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate you, Telded Boy. How cool are you, man? You got no idea how cool that is. I just love that shade of pink. It's not even funny. Yeah, holy guacamole, Batman. Thank you so very much. Let's give you a love. I really appreciate you, man. Check out that color of pink. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you, everybody, for, you know, even just if you're hitting the like button, I really Appreciate it. This took me ages to put this together, as you can imagine, so it's nice to know it's being appreciated. Thank you so much, Dolly boy. What can I tell you, man? Love to you. So yeah, false consensus engineering, creating the illusion that most people agree with big idea policy. This is that conformity experiment, Ash conformity experiment. That was it, right? Don't worry, there's a break coming up soon, right? So Ash conformity experiment is where they had the strips of lines that were like, you'd have 4 lines and one of them was clear. You had to say which was the longest line, right? And, you know, one of the lines would be clearly longer than the other 3, yeah? But there was a room of 20 people in there, but 19 of them or whatever were actors, right? They were university students under this professor, so they were there as actors, right? So they were purposefully choosing one that wasn't the longest, right? So when everybody said 3, everyone said number 3 was the longest, and then he got to this dude, and he is like, the first couple, he said number 2 is the longest one, and sort of looking around him. By the time the second one was going long, he was just agreeing with what everybody else was saying, just as that conformity, the need to conform to the crowd. This is where crowd dynamics come into it, which is another psychology altogether that's worth studying. So it's really powerful stuff, right? Creating the illusion that most people agree with a specific idea policy because people want to conform to the group, right? They don't want to feel like an outsider, unlike us Sigmas, who quite happy being independent and open-minded and critical thinking. Do you know what I mean? Oh man, hence the whole reject the herd, prepare to pack. Yeah. So the execution methods you expect to see, stuff like media coverage bias. Again, like I said, you could just like only report on a certain thing constantly and people would start, you know, thinking that everyone agreed with it. This is like they do on CNN, where they're only talking to voters of who are people are voting for Kamala, and they will never talk to anyone who's going to vote for Trump, God forbid. Do you know what I mean? It's just classic stuff like that. So over-reporting favourable opinions while ignoring dissenting voices, manipulated polls using leading questions or small bias samples, as in, you know, they'll like ask the office staff of CNN who are all lefties, you know what I mean? And then they're going to be already getting, they're already engineering consensus from people because they're just making them believe that everyone's already thinking that and everyone's already believing that anyway, yeah? Really powerful stuff. So bot networks can come into that to use them to have amplify the hashtags, right? Because they send in, you know, just paid. You've seen them before, racks and racks and racks of smartphones, and they've all got their own accounts, and they're just paid by, you know, the powers that be to just go and like certain things to raise them to the top. You know what I mean? And put positive comments on the ones that follow the narrative to push it to the top. The creators think that they're doing a great job and they're getting validation, but they're not. Half of these things are bots. Yeah. And they're only there to make everyone else looking at the comment section think that everyone else thinks that that's that, right? Hence, false consensus engineering. Oh, it gets nastier, don't worry. So, media capture is another element of shaping public perception that's used quite widely. So this is gaining covert control over media outlets to shape public narratives. We saw that in Canada, don't forget, talking of Trudeau being booted out. But we had that in Canada several years ago where Trudeau dished out like $100 million or whatever it was to the mainstream CNBC, Canadian broadcasting, whatever it was. And a couple of others, just like, Josh, have some. Yeah? Like they're not going to be expecting anything back in return for that. Sigma Prepper merch available, don't forget, from the Etsy store. Cheers, everyone. Love, peace, and progress to the pack. I hope you're enjoying it. So, media capture then. So, ownership, governments or corporations owning media organisations outright, yeah? Editorial influence. So we're offering access to stories or financial incentives to align reporting with certain views. Do you know what? I worked in the media for a while. I ran my own media business, right? But my own award-winning media business, may I add. But I did do a stint in newspaper advertising, right? I did directory advertising as well, and then digital and stuff. But in newspaper advertising, I learned something quite interesting there, and it kind of made sense as to why things are the way they are. And why certain businesses advertise the way they do. Because if you've got a business that's advertising, let's say for example HSBC as a bank is advertising in the Telegraph or newspaper, yeah, which is a national newspaper in the UK. So if they're an advertiser in the newspaper, there's like a policy / law that they're not allowed to speak badly of that entity if they are a paying advertiser in the publication, which kind of makes sense, right? I mean, if you're going to be paying like £10,000 a month or whatever for a full page ad in the Telegraph newspaper a month or whatever it is, a publication, you don't really want the page before to be having some bad news story about you, right? And so it's like a policy thing. So if you wonder why you see all of the top businesses, like top banks and all that, who don't really need to advertise, but they're all got adverts in these things, or like Big Pharma, they got adverts on news stations. By policy, that news station is now not allowed to say anything bad about you because you're an advertiser. Do you see how that works? If you wonder why certain things are sponsored by certain companies, now you know why, because they can't talk badly about them by policy. So censorship, suppressing dissenting voices within the media. Yeah, we've seen that loads with people being deplatformed and things. But again, that's a larger topic itself. we'll get into later in this presentation specifically. So cultural warfare. Tell me we're not seeing that going on right now. Come on, Wolfpack. This is properly in full effect. Gradual erosion of cultural values or norms to destabilise societal cohesion. 100%. Could say a lot about it, but I'm not. So the execution methods we expect to see here then is things like promoting divisive ideologies, 100%, amplifying issues to polarised populations, right? Absolutely. Undermining institutions, weakening faith in traditional pillars like family, religion or education, 100% seeing that every day. Injecting counter narratives, yeah, where we got, introducing controversial topics to redirect attention from, the distractions basically that we're seeing all the time, right? Everyone's saying, oh, this just feels like a distraction. It's because it is, right? And they're always things that are done that are divisive. They're always culturally divisive or culturally eroding, which is all helps towards that globalization, believe it or not, is where that links in, but we ain't getting into that today. So the last one in the shaping public perception realm of warfare tactics is the censorship and gatekeeping, right? This is big time. This is big time what I suffer from over the years, and with this channel too. Like I say, if you subscribe to this channel, you need to watch how quickly you get unsubscribed from this channel, because like I say, it's about 30%. If I look at all the number of people that subscribed in the last month, and then the number of the people that have unsubscribed, people don't unsubscribe from this channel. I don't mean to sound funny, but they just don't. I don't give people a reason to. Right? And I've represented like 80, 90 channels on YouTube as a media company before, so I know what's normal or not levels of people unsubscribing, right? So it's about 30% of people over the last 28 days have unsubscribed, apparently. And it's always 30%, right? So there's other versions of censorship and gatekeeping, right? So suppressing or filtering information to ensure only approved narratives are accessible. Everyone knows this is what's going on, right? Algorithm manipulation, social media platforms, limiting the reach of dissenting views. I've just said that. With this channel, blocking platforms, so government-imposed internet restrictions or firewalls, things like banning TikTok, let's say, right? Things like trying to do what they were doing with Twitter until kind of Elon stepped in there and all the rest of it, right? Shadow banning, silently reducing the visibility of accounts or content without notifying users. Classic. So yeah, I got removed from the search engines on this channel, even though I spent most of my life as an expert SEO guy, right? It's quite comical. I think I'm making my way back in there now, but I don't know. I've been running this channel for nearly 3 years, and I was only monetized about 3 weeks ago. So you know what I mean? It's crazy. Anyway, moving swiftly on. So this sums up the shaping public perception part of the tactics, right? So now we're into the next one. Don't forget, when we get after the third one, we're going on a break, so it should be pretty good timing. We've been rocking for 43 minutes so far, so we should be about right. So we'll blast through. So manipulating behavior. So this is obviously, instead of shaping public perception, which is one thing, yeah, controlling the way people view things and stuff, right? The manipulating behavior is kind of speaks for itself, right? This is more like, you know, changing the way people act and what they do, what they buy, where they go, and so on, right? So the behavior manipulation as a overall category group of tactics, right, is made up of itself these. So mass formation psychosis, I talked about this at length in 2020 and 2021, if you know what I mean. Exploiting groupthink and emotional contagion to drive collective behavior, yeah. Real dangerous stuff, mass formation psychosis, I'm telling you, right? So we've also got a Kurt Lewin's research spiral, which I've talked about before and used in various elements. We'll get into that in more detail, using the unfreeze, change, refreeze model to introduce new norms. Definitely seeing that in full effect repeatedly. Fear appeals, amplifying fear to manipulate behavior. Particularly the more of a state of fear and panic people are in, the less critical thinking they are in their decision making. They tend to sort of like lean towards just going with whatever the group's going with, or going whatever the leader says to do, whether that's their religious leader, their political leader, or their family leader, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So crisis exploitation, also known as shock doctrine, yeah. I can guarantee everyone who's watching this has experienced this. We'll get into examples when we get into the details. Leveraging crisis to push policies or control the public. Is like a classic Hegelian dialectic, yeah, problem, reaction, solution stuff. So we've got social isolation as part of this as well, targeting individuals to isolate and discredit them socially or professionally, you know, like they did to things like, oh, check out, tell the boy, my missus will kill me if she sees another donation. Thank you so much, man. Well, I'll tell you what, maybe my missus will be so happy she can talk your missus down, Delta Boy, but I really appreciate you, man. I hope she doesn't cancel the credit card as a result or anything like that. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. What an absolute superstar. Thank you to everybody who's helping to keep the lights on and the internet connected and things. Like I say, I've run this channel through shadow banning and things for 3 years and only just made it above 1,000 subscribers because they keep taking them off. So, you know, they're trying to socially isolate me, right? So herd mentality exploitation. Of course, as Sigma personalities, they're the people who don't want to be part of the herd. They want to be self-sufficient, independent, and self-reliant, and skills building focused and stuff like this, right? So we're quite difficult to be encouraged into the groupthink realms of, you know, to suppress dissent, yeah? Dissenting voices, people who don't agree. So gaslighting, absolutely in full effect around the world, right? Manipulating individuals or the public into doubting their perceptions of reality, right? Something clearly has happened. It's quite an observable fact that everybody, you know, the emperor's not wearing any clothes and everybody knows the emperor isn't wearing any clothes, but yet you're convinced that he's wearing clothes, or you're not allowed to say that he is anyway. So let's get into it then, one by one. So the first one on the list then in the manipulating behavior is the mass formation psychosis, right? So the definition, psychological phenomenon where individuals in a group abandon critical thinking, adopting a collective belief system driven by shared emotions. Think about what went on in 2020, right? And how people were just literally seemed to be off their trolley, right? But it was actually more to do with them suffering from mass formation psychosis, right? I don't know why YouTube suddenly chopped 20 people off out of nowhere. Is this another one of its little tricks it's pulling, isn't it? Maybe we are getting into some pretty deep territory here that, you know, part of my autism, you see, means that I don't really know what you're supposed to know or not. These are just things that I know and I want to share. And if they want to send me a list of things I'm not allowed to talk about, and that's fine. So let's carry on through with mass formation psychosis, because believe me, most of these things on here, they don't want you to know about, right? But we need to know about them so that we don't fall foul of it, right? Don't forget, it's easier to convince someone than it is to convince them they've been, it's easier to fool someone than it is to convince someone they've been fooled. So it's easier to just not be fooled in the first place by understanding the strategies, the tactics, and the methods, and the way that they're executed, so you can identify it and ask yourself the question to ask yourself the question, right? Question everything. That's what this is all about. This is the underpinning message from me to you throughout all of this, is to question everything. And I'm giving you slide after slide after slide as to reason why. So execution methods include fear and anxiety, amplifying. Don't forget what I said earlier, right? Just the typical standard anyone who's studied psychology would know. When people are in a state of fear and anxiety, they don't make good decisions because they're not thinking critically, right? And so you'll see the whole point, the definition of mass formation psychosis is abandoning critical thinking. And the way that you do that is you instill fear as the method to execute, right? Is the instilling fear and anxiety. Yeah. You're going to kill Granny, this kind of stuff. So amplifying existential threats to trigger emotional dependency on authority, yeah. Isolation and solidarity, reinforcing group identity by separating dissenters from the collective, yeah. Again, other ways of doing that include things like the cancelling and, stuff like that, right? Reinforcement loops, or things like, Jordan Peterson, yeah, for example. Isolation, solidarity, the way they tried to cut him out of everything, and the university and the mainstream, and stopped him from traveling places, right? It's like epic. Reinforcement loops as well, so the continual messaging, it doesn't just once, you got to be continually doing it, otherwise you don't enter that psychosis element of psychology, right? So it needs to be repeated over and over again for it to become the psychosis that it becomes, i.e. the people, it's almost like instills a cognitive dissonance, where the brain kind of like is holding two opposing thoughts at the same time. That's kind of a symptom of psychosis. And so you do that by continually repeating something so they believe it, even though there's lots of evidence that would critically suggest that that's not the case, but they still believe it, right? It's complicated stuff, but it's not, right? But it's about strengthening that emotional connection to those ideologies, right? Continually. And across a large demographic, i.e. an entire country or even the global population, that's where you get the mass formation. Rather than just formation psychosis, right? So you're doing it to everybody, or as many as you can. Powerful stuff, I'm telling thee. So here we go with the Kurt Lewin's research spiral, and this is something that they use to deploy new government policies, new laws and things like this. Yeah, the Kurt Lewin's research spiral is used quite a lot for that in more detail. I've trimmed this down into 3 because I usually present this as 5 phases of the Kurt Lewin's research spiral, but I'm trying to keep everything down to 3, right? So, oh, I see, sorry. UK Urban Prepper, I think, just did a premiere video, so I think everyone's shooting off to see that. This is obviously not interesting enough. I just had a notification pop up. So, Kurt Lewin's research spiral, 3-step model, unfreeze, change, refreeze, used to destabilize existing behaviors and solidify new ones. So let's go through this and I'll explain if I feel we need to. So unfreezing, so creating uncertainty or chaos to weaken attachment to old norms, e.g. fear campaigns, economic instability. This is like, I'm just thinking of what we can use for this as an example, but come to think of it, the economic instability, I wasn't going to. So for example, where it comes to like digital currencies, right, there's a lot of like there's a lot of sort of creating uncertainty and chaos around the cash thing by places not taking cash and making it limited and changing the way it is so people don't like it anymore, stuff like this, right? And all the propaganda that goes with it. That's a part of that unfreezing. That's part of that, you've almost got to, You've got to destroy the existing thing first so that you have an excuse to rebuild something new as the solution. You see? But what you need to make sure you do within the Kurt Lewin's research spiral is to do it in a using a methodology that allows you to make incremental changes into people's perceptions, people's where this is where, you know, perception management comes in. This is where the propaganda comes in. This is where all the things we've seen in this list up until now come in to help achieve the incremental changes and monitoring of those reactions to those changes using things like bots and AI to detect people's general level of how they feel about stuff. You can then revise. This is the changing, introducing new ideas or behaviors as solutions to the chaos. And then the refreezing is normalizing the new behaviors by embedding them in social routines. And so really between the changing and refreezing is a monitoring period where you're trying to sort of discover what people's ideas are on that or how they feel about that. It's like a test, dipping the toe in the water. The mainstream will push out a news story that seems extreme, that they're going to do what? They're going to ban internal combustion cars by 2020 when? Right? This kind of stuff. And so they get people's reaction back on that. This is why it's a research spiral. It's like a feedback loop. So you gain understanding of how people feel about that topic and where you are with where you want them to feel, where they're feeling now, and then you need to bridge that gap, right? And you use all of the other strategies and tactics that I'm talking about tonight as the tools to bridge that gap to their mindset changing, right, into where you want them to think, so that then you can start normalizing that view of it that's now new, yeah? And it just becomes the norm. And then anybody who doesn't think that becomes an outlier, yeah? I hope I've made that clear enough. But the point is it goes back round again. So then you know where you need to get to, right? So then you make another incremental bit of chaos and like make a problem and see how people react to the potential solutions you put out there that you could do about it. And then you get all the stuff that they say by sort of secretly, covertly. This is where things like 77th Brigade and things like this come in, where they're monitoring people's perceptions of things through the internet and through social media comments and things. These AIs sort of like scrape all of people's comments and they can get a collective view of how people are feeling on certain topics, right? It's very useful information for governments to understand how their populace is feeling about certain things, like going to war with Russia, right? I mean, they need to know how likely it's going to be for them to be able to call up people to be fighting in a war, right? And you can't just suddenly decide to do that and then just hope people turn up and go, yeah, me, I'm up for it. You need to be way ahead of the game. You need to be ahead of the curve, and you need to be understanding what people's views are on that now by putting a statement out there saying, oh, we're going to be doing conscription, Yeah, the intelligence services are out there checking the people's feedback and what they're saying about it on the webs. Yeah. And then they'll go, oh man, well, this is what people are saying. These are people's concerns. These are the things that they're worried about. These are the reasons why they're saying no, they don't want to. So we need to work on that. And they'll work on that. They'll do the propaganda. They'll do the, you know, all the other tactics and strategies, yeah, to change and manage people's perceptions to a different direction, right? And so over time, you'll eventually get people to be right up for going to war against Russia. Yeah, let's get them, right? But it takes this Kurt Lewin's research spiral of incremental change and reviewing people's thing, creating it as a normal, and so on, right? So manipulating behavior also includes fear appeals. So this is where we're talking about making people in a state of anxiety and fear to make them less critical thinking, which is all goes towards creating that mass formation psychosis as well. So manipulating behavior by amplifying real or perceived dangers to elicit compliance or inaction. The world's going to boil over if we don't do something about climate change, right? Authority messaging. Yeah, so exaggerated threats, overstating risks to invoke emotional reactions. You're killing our babies. Authority messaging, leveraging trust in institutions to amplify the perceived severity of threats. 97% of scientists agree. Moralizing consequences, framing non-compliance as selfish or harmful to others. You're killing Granny! Oh, man. So, crisis exploitation. Never let a crisis go to waste, as they say. Yeah? I don't know what's going on with the live views right now. They just suddenly dropped off, and I'm not quite sure why. Am I talking about boring stuff? Should I just give up and go home and take my ball in? I'm not sure what's going on out there. Is YouTube doing it or what? Maybe it's just people. They're tired and it's thingy bob because it's a school night. Yeah. So anyway. Crisis exploitation, never let us go. Shock doctrine is no way of describing it. So exploitation crisis, real or manufactured, to push through unpopular policies or measures. So think things like gun control. Think of the events that happen leading up to the big pushes in the media for more gun control. Things like shootings that have happened that have been questionable by various people in terms of whether they even happened or not, or whether they were manufactured or not, and so on. Right? These are all part of those tactics. So it doesn't really matter whether it was real or staged with crisis actors or things like this. As long as you believe that, it's a crisis, you can push through unpopular things like, we're going to need to change the law. In fact, you get people begging for it, right? You start off with like that Kurt Lewin spiral, right? You've done your little research, sort of like mainstream media prompt and poke. Of like, oh, this is what the government's thinking of doing. There's a leaked policy. Whenever you see there's a leaked policy from the government, it's not a leaked policy. This is part of the Kurt Lewin's research spiral they're doing on you. Right? They're just seeing how you're going to react to it. So they know how far out they are, right? Fuck. So anyway. There'll be something like creating a problem. This is like part of that Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. You got to create the problem, and then you can exploit people's reaction of that problem when they just like, we can't let this happen again. We got to save our babies, our poor kids in the schools. Yeah, we need to stop anyone having anything like that at all. We need to ban all guns and so on. Right? So, introducing policies under the guise of temporary solutions, yeah, things like what we saw in the lockdowns. Oh, it's just temporary, it's just for a couple of weeks, it's all right, yeah, it's be all right in a couple of weeks. Yeah, emergency measures. It's a special occasion, it's martial law, we have to, because we're trying to find this guy, so we've locked all your town down, like they did in Philadelphia, wherever it was, back in 2015, or whatever it was when I was reporting on that. That was their first part of that crisis exploitation, which was all part of that Kurt Lewin spiral to test people's reactions to being put into a lockdown martial law scenario with something that I can't talk to you about in that much detail, but don't worry about it. Anyway, so public distrust amplification, discrediting opponents as incapable of addressing the crisis. Yeah. You got to trust you got to trust the mainstream sources. You remember matey girl from New Zealand? Yeah, it was going about, don't trust anything but the government. Everything else is a lie. I forget I even know what her name was now. Didn't she become something to do with WEF in the time, after all? Anyway. So, social isolation was one of the other parts of the manipulating behaviour. Social isolation is a big one they use all of the time, particularly in more recent years. So, targeting individuals to separate them from their communities or support networks, right? I mean, some would say that they're doing that with Funky Prepper, right? Execution methods. So you've got smear campaigns. We've seen that loads of times. Look at what they've done to Trump with the smear campaigns. Anything they can get their hands on. 34 felonies. Bada, bada, bada. Yeah, whatever. Discrediting individuals to make them socially untouchable. Economic marginalization. So threatening livelihoods to enforce conformity. Yeah. It's like, we'll just take your house from you, right? Or, BLM land versus wherever it was. can't remember the name of those people. Do you remember that though? With the BLM one up against those dudes on the land, and they did a whole economic attack on them, right? Turning people off, yeah, shutting their bank account down and stuff like that, threatening livelihoods to enforce conformity. So digital censorship as well, of course, deplatforming individuals to remove their voices entirely from public discourse. Again, which some would say has happened to Funky Prepper as well, right? Don't worry, we've got a break coming up soon. We're only about 3 minutes. We'll only be about 5 minutes overdue for the break. So herd mentality exploitation, which we listed. So this is the details of that one. So encouraging groupthink to suppress dissent and enforce compliance. Don't remember what I told you about it. Ash conformity experiment is so powerful to make people conform in a certain way. And so by using that, you can instill that groupthink. And then any outlier dissenter is going to feel really exposed and really isolated and on their own, and highlighted as such a contrast between the group. Right, so that's a real important part of it, is to gain that herd mentality. And so again, part of that whole Sigma Prepper mindset would reject the herd, prepare the pack as a tagline, right? It's not a coincidence. So the mainstream media messaging there is one of the execution methods, you know, framing dissenters as outsiders and dangerous and stuff, like right-wing Nazis and racist homophobes. You've seen it all, right? Come on, we know what that's all about. So peer pressure, leveraging social networks to enforce conformity. Yeah, so it's just like making sure that, you know, the government's making threats to things like TikTok, to things like Facebook and Twitter, if they don't hand over the files, if they don't ban someone, if they don't suppress someone, right? Because the governments can't do it themselves because of things like the Article 10 Human Rights Convention means that governments can't do it themselves. You've got, you know, the First Amendment in America, or the freedom of speech, but the governments can encourage the corporations to do that on the people, which is partly what you would call fascism. When the corporations are working in line, or the governments are working in hand in hand with the corporations, was the original definition of it. And so that's really what's happening, because the governments can't do it themselves, despite what obviously people like Snowden revealed about what the government were doing anyway, but it was just the fact that it wasn't talked about. And so, you know, by leveraging those sorts of entities to make them have to do certain things, otherwise we'll revoke your license, we'll make things difficult, we'll send the IRS in, right, this kind of stuff. So simplified narratives, reducing complex issues to good versus bad to discourage critical thinking. We saw that an awful lot in 2020 as well, didn't we? It was just, you know, it was just those that are with us and those that are against us. It was the same with the 9/11 thing. Yeah, you're either with us or you're our enemy, kind of an attitude, right? you either would have a relationship with a transgender, or you're a homophobe, or you're transphobic. That kind of thing. Simplifying narratives, right? So gaslighting. Oh man, this is totally prevalent as anything going on right now. Yeah. Manipulating individuals or groups into doubting their perceptions of reality, right? It's just like, no, it's perfectly normal. This is totally natural. Don't worry. Yeah. Or things like, oh, it's the hottest year on record. It's like, no, it wasn't. Do you know what I mean? Just the most obvious things that we're made to believe is like, oh, EVs are more efficient than themobs, even though they weigh a ton more. It's like, well, the last time I checked, KE equals half mv squared. So kinetic energy is made up of half the velocity and the mass. Yeah. Sorry, half the mass and twice the velocity squared. So the mass is really important. So if you increase the mass, then it's going to take more energy to get it moving and to stop it. So yeah, that's not more efficient, but it's okay. But you got to agree that it is. Oh, okay. Yeah, lovely, right? Gaslighting to hell, convincing you stuff that is just quite plainly obvious, right? Conflicting information. So again, like the execution is denial of observable facts, which are kind of illustrated there, repeatedly contradicting evidence to create doubt, like conflicting information, flooding the narrative with alternatives to confuse audiences. Don't forget, confusion is part of that fear and anxiety, because in confusion, what do people do when they're confused about making a decision? They look up to their leaders to tell them how to vote, to tell them how to think, to tell them how to decide, to tell them what to buy, to tell them where to go, right? people freeze in that part of that, freeze, fight, flight, and fawn survival instincts. Yeah, you can get people into that state of freeze and conform, right? Quite easily. And if you have to gaslight people into it, then that's what you do, right? And again, any dissent is just framed as being irrational or paranoid, you know, or conspiracy theorists. So here we go then, number 3, and then we're going for a break. So we're going to be ploughing through this one. Not as many in this one. So deception and covert subversion. Again, if it's covert, you're not supposed to know it's happening, right? And the whole point of that is the deception, and by, you know, being deceived, right? So this is how I've grouped this up into this kind of like subcategory of psychological and information warfare. So deception and covert subversion are made up of the following tactics that we'll look into more detail before we go to the break. So number 1, disinformation. Spreading false information to mislead. We all know about that. Misinformation, we've all heard about that. Unintentionally spreading incorrect information. We've got controlled opposition, planting or supporting fake opposition to controlled dissent. Lots of people throw claims about who they think is controlled opposition or not, right? I'm sure you've got your own ideas of who you think is or not. Let us know live in the chat who you're thinking. Planting or supporting fake opposition to controlled dissent is quite an important one. It's very powerful stuff as well. A lot of people would talk about people like, you know, Brand, yeah. What's his name? Even Alex Jones would be considered controlled opposition by most and things, right? People like even Snowden, some people think are controlled opposition. That's more what you would call military terms. You'd call that a limited hangout. Edward Snowden, that's more like making it appear as though something's being divulged, but it's actually not. They kind of want you to know that, but they don't want it to be coming from them. It's easier if it looks like it's been exposed, and then that's all part of that Kurt Lewin's thing, where they can then normalize it. Do you remember that bit where you have to normalize it? Right? So you normalize the fact that you're just being spied on, right? So like, oh, well, we just got to get over it, nothing to do about it, right? You see? It's just normalizing it. That's how it went, wasn't it? It was like, this is happening. Oh, fuck, you know, most people were like, yeah, obviously. But a lot of people were like, oh, fuck me, you know. But what happened? Nothing. Do you know what I mean? It just normalized it. So a lot of people would say that even people like Edward Snowden are controlled opposition. Anyway. So agent provocateurs send a lot of that at protests and rallies and stuff, yeah. People who infiltrate on groups to incite violence or discredit movements and things, right? To make it look like, oh, the extremist far-right groups are all violent and blah, blah, blah. So also part of the deception covert subversion is the COINTELPRO. So that's the, you know, is the opposite of what you're trying to do, is to do the opposite to not let that happen. So targeting and dismantling activist groups through infiltration and surveillance. So you're basically infiltrating the people trying to infiltrate. False flag operations, classic, staging attacks to frame another group to justify actions. So things like, you know, what you see going on. I'm not even going to mention where it's going on. Rumour mongering, so planting unverified stories to discredit or confuse, and then got seeding myths as well. So promoting false narratives to create lasting misperceptions. I thought I could have sworn I'd written misconceptions. So let's get into it then. Disinformation. I don't think we need to labour these ones. We can fly through some of these. You know, planting fake stories. You see all the time. Yeah, using media or online platforms to spread fabricated reports that people end up believing just because they've seen it. Echo chambers, amplifying false narratives through controlled outlets and social media. A lot of people end up in echo chambers anyway, where they're surrounded by people who all think the same as them. That's where that conformity comes in, right? That groupthink. And you got blurring the truth and lies, you know, mixing partial truths for misinformation to confuse audiences. This is, again, goes back to a little bit with that limited hangout type strategy I was talking to you about, right? You do that by putting some real hardcore truths out there, but there's a few little snidey bits in there that they either hold back or change so that they can feel like plausible deniability. Well, we did tell you, you know what I mean, but not. So misinformation, you know, similar thing, manipulate headlines, misleading titles that don't reflect the full content of articles. But the whole point of this is that absolute plausible deniability to say, oh, you know, well, no, sorry, that was just misleading. That we didn't mean for it to come out like that. The title was supposed to suggest da 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 da. You see, you can make misinformation look innocent, but it's not. It's designed to misinform, right? So unintentionally, often due to lack of verification. You know, users sharing false information without fact checking, right? You know, you get things end up going viral, and then just because it's seen everywhere, people assume it's true. Yeah. And you see this exaggerated statistics, again, going back to things like climate change. You see a lot of that all the time. You know, things like how many people have been unalived in Ukraine versus how many people have been lost in Russia. Classic exaggerated statistics as well we get here in the West. So then we've got the controlled opposition, which I kind of laboured on about that anyway. But again, you know, it's like planting the leaders, planting people in there that are sort of like, look like they're controlled opposition. So they're not the opposition, but they look like they are. So they'll look like they're like, you know, on your side, but really they're working for the opposition, and their kind of like job is to, we talked about gatekeeping and censoring earlier. Gatekeeping is a part of that subversion with the controlled opposition. Do you know what I mean? Because they're sort of like channeling people's anger over topics. So let's say, for example, you know, like, you know, somebody is a controlled opposition talking about right-wing issues, let's say, right? Their job is to talk about those issues seemingly in a way that's, you know, in line with what people are believing, but really their job is to kind of start to sway slowly by choosing which stories they show, which they don't, which statistics they show, which they don't, do you see? But you don't suspect them to be misinforming you because they look like they're on your side, you see, but they're really controlled opposition. So in a nutshell, that's basically what that's all about, right? And I've laboured that quite a lot because it is an important one, because it is everywhere. So agent provocateurs, this is really, really what you see happening in the news all the time. When you see these right-wing, you know, violent protests, it's always riots this and riots that rather than demonstrations this and demonstrations that, right? And part of the way they do that is they have like undercover cops and stuff that go in there looking like crowd members. In fact, in the last bunch last year, there's quite a few protests where the undercover cops were called out as being just that. Who were the ones who were setting fires to things, who were the ones who were breaking windows. And so their job is they're paid to go in and look like a protester, but they're riling everybody else up by doing the vandalism, being the first to start being violent, being the first to start attacking the cops, being the first to start tipping over bins and things like this, right? But that's their job, and it makes everybody else, it's all part of that, you know, group think. They all, you know, start doing things they wouldn't ordinarily do because they see with someone else doing it. Do you know what I mean? But it's actually just an agent provocateur whose job is to make it look like that's what they think. And then before you know it, you've just turned a peaceful demonstration into a complete riot. Job done, right? And the actual demonstrators had nothing to do with it. Never even... So many people fall into this trap, it's not even funny. So anyway, inciting violence, encouraging protests to commit acts, entrapment, providing tools or plans for illegal activities to implicate members. There was a classic thingy bob just a year and a half ago in America somewhere, and ironically, just as this protest was about to take place, there was all these bricks that had been delivered on the side of the street, like perfect throwing bricks had been delivered and placed in like 4 streets at the end of the streets on big pallets for no reason at all. It's like, oh, that's handy. And then guess what was being thrown at the riot police the following day was these bricks. It's amazing. Like you couldn't see that coming. Like that wasn't a classic example of entrapment. Anyway, but not just entrapment. That would have been the agent provocateur throwing the first rock, believe me, right? Anyway, COINTEL Pro, the FBI's counterintelligence program. So they're trying to counter other people's intelligence. So that's like disinformation and stuff like that you feed in by infiltrating and stuff, right? And disrupting them and, you can do quite a lot of damage in that way, especially if you're in there secretly and they don't even know you're in their group, and you can make them look bad, right? So surveillance, monitoring leaders and members to gather compromising information, you know, like think P. Diddy, think, you know, Epstein and that. Forgeries, planting fake letters or documents to create distrust within groups all the time. You know, a lot of time you see big headlines and that of certain individuals is because they've broken someone's rule, and they're being exposed with what they were being threatened with. Character assassinations, you know, spreading rumors or false information about leaders and stuff. I won't even mention some of the instances recently we've seen with all that, because I'm probably getting into even more trouble than this show's going to get me in. False flag operations, absolute classic. Covert actions designed to appear as though they were carried out by other groups. I mean, this is just, I don't, you know, statistically speaking, I don't think any conflict over a history of time has ever been started through anything else other than a false flag operation, right? A thing where you think that, a thing where our government does something to another country using a ship that looks like it's some other country's with some other country's flag on it, hence the false flag. So that then people believe that this country just did something to us, but it's not. It was actually us firing on ourselves. But what we used to fire on ourselves with was a ship we stole that was one of theirs that looks like theirs, and we put one of their flags on it, and it looks like they did it, but they didn't. It's just we want people to think that they did it. So then we say, oh, look, you know, we need to protect ourselves. We need to defend ourselves from these rockets that they're sending from Palestine, and you have to justify your response. And sometimes if you don't get them firing the rockets in the first place, it's easier to just send some geezer over the border with a couple of rockets and say, dude, jump over there, would you, and wear a Palestinian flag and just shoot some rockets over, would you? Do us a favour? Fucking hell. Anyway, rumour mongering, second to last one. Yeah, and then we got a break because my tea is, if it's not empty, it's freezing. Please do let us know on the like button and in the live chat if you're liking it so far, or in the comments, just let us know. Say yes, liking it. I don't know. I love all this stuff. You might think it's really boring and people aren't lasting more than 5 minutes in and then they're just out, and then there's just this cycle of people just... So rumour mongering, spreading unverified or exaggerated stories to discredit or confuse. Because again, once there's a rumour going, this is like never let a crisis go to waste. If a rumour comes out about something and it's not true, and like the mainstream or the government agency or whatever knows it's not true, they can help to perpetuate and fuel that fire of that rumour or myth becoming more believable to their own advantage, right? So they haven't started that rumour, but a rumour is out there, so they'll help to fuel it, right? Give it some airtime and shit, using things like the algorithms and that to boost them up the search rankings, so people just come across it on their home feed and shit like that, right? So anonymous tips feeding untraceable stories to journalists or social media, yeah. Whisper campaigns using informal networks to circulate damaging rumours and planting doubt, suggesting connections or motives without evidence. And again, it's amazing what rumours will do. Yeah, like I said before earlier, really powerful stuff. Yeah, it's easier to fool someone than it is to convince someone that they've been fooled. So if you wonder why it's so difficult to wake people up, it's because of that. So seeding myths is kind of leading on from what we were just talking about, right? Introducing false narratives. This is where you're actually putting them in, or conspiracy theories to create lasting misconceptions. So we're seeding them, not fueling them now. We're seeding them in the first place, right? Introducing false narratives of conspiracy theories to create lasting misconceptions. You know, people talk about UFOs as part of that, and did we land on the moon or not, to cover other things, you know. Historical revisions, so altering records or creating myths about past events. Oh, check out Emma in the house. Thank you, Drew. Such important info. We'll be rewatching in the morning again. Oh, good night, my beautiful. Thank you so much, Emma. What an absolute babe. Let's just have a very quick look at your super chat. I like to see it. I like everybody to be able to see it. There it is. Thank you so much. Look, there she is. Emma, my darling. I haven't even looked at the chat for ages, so I don't know who here or who is not. So I'm sorry, just one of those shows tonight. We'll have some more in part 2. We'll be backwards and forwards a bit more, but so yeah, Seed in the Mist, just historical revisions, altering stuff, right? Pop culture. I mean, the historical revisions are something they do as well as part of that gaslighting they can do as well. They do that on, you know, what do you call it? Wikipedia all the time. You know, they make revisions on stuff and then they lock it so that no one who knows what they're talking about is able to change it. And if you ever see a subject or topic on Wikipedia that's locked, walk away. Walk away. Pop culture insertion using movies, books or media to reinforce the myth. Do you know what I mean? We know about that with all the departments in Hollywood that are run by the sort of CIA and stuff, that are the sort of industrial military complex, that military industrial complex, sorry, which are seeded into Hollywood to ensure in their scripts of the movies that there's things in there that are favourable to certain narratives and agendas and so on, right? So repetition over time, again, always important stuff. That repetition, slowly embedding the narrative as a widely accepted truth, and you can start to normalise it. Don't forget, it's part of that Kurt Lewin spiral. So yeah, and that is the first 3 of the 6 entire categories of tactics used as part of psychological and informational warfare tactic. And you can see these ones are a bit shorter, the last 3. So that's what we're going to be talking about when we come back. But that was the deception and covert subversion. We're going to be having a 5-minute tea break now. And then when we come back, we're going to be going through the exploiting digital platforms, the undermining trust, and one of the most important, I suppose, the infiltration and control. So we've got so much more to come. So please don't go anywhere, anybody. We're just going to have a brew. Yes, we are. We'll just have a quick say hello and check out the last 10 messages or so from the live chat. I do appreciate you all being with us. I know it's been a long part 1. Yes, Drew, loving it is the first thing that's on my chat window, which is nice to see. I always like to see the word Drew loving and it in the same sentence. Love this stuff. Pat's liking it as well. That's cool. The US ship delivered. Yeah, absolutely. Great to see you, Buffer B. I hope you've subscribed and I hope you've joined the Discord server because it's free. And if you haven't, how very dare you not. LBR Starers, loving every minute. Thank you, Robert. So important to know these things, especially today. This is exactly this is the warfare that's going on now every day, right? If you hadn't noticed. So if some of these things are appearing and feeling familiar to you, you know why I wanted this one to be the one I do tonight. Amphir in the house, great to see you. Great to see you, Amphir. Really appreciate those that have helped to keep the show alive tonight. It does take a long time for me to put these shows together, as I'm sure you can imagine. Sigma's lecture will be simultaneously required training video. Oh, Manny. You're speeding through this with great clarity and humour, Batman. I appreciate that. Thank you. There's my beautiful bat full of hope as well. Whew, such a babe. Thank you for being. Do you like the new emojis full of hope I did just for you? I filled up the entire allocation of custom emojis for the YouTube members. And don't forget, if you've just joined us, the YouTube members all get themselves, get their hands on, as of from yesterday, they're scooted up to the top. If you're clever, you'll just pause this and scan the QR code and you'll get the latest version anyway. But the VIP patrons and YouTube members have got access to this 42-page winter prepping guide that I spend a lot of time putting together. More time than it took me to put tonight's presentation together, believe me. Sorry, I want to scoot through. So this is epic. I mean, I spent a long time on it. I'm super proud of all the work I put out to the public. This is going out to the VIP patrons and members first. It's absolutely jam-packed with every single thing you could possibly need in your winter car kit, including a very convenient tick box list as well, as a part of a chapter I put in there. Let me scoot to that, where you can select and it remembers. Look, you see, it's remembered all of my stuff that I've got and what I haven't got in that list we've just seen. And then I've given you as well a sneak preview, a chapter preview for my other book, which is the 400-page book, the Ultimate Guide to Prepping, the Ultimate Prepping Guide, sorry. And so this Surviving Natural Disasters gives you 1/12 of that chapter, I've included the blizzards and ice storms subsection of that chapter for you, which looks like this. So obviously the ultimate prepping guide has all of this for ice storms and blizzards, plus everything with the other 11 natural disasters as well, plus SHTF intel sources and a whole bunch more. So free for you who are YouTube members and supporters of Patreon and all that. So I really appreciate each and every one of you. But we are going to go into a short break. Don't go anywhere because we've got the entire part 2 to come yet. So do enjoy the break time music. And in the meantime, I shall see you in 5 minutes with a fresh brew. Love, peace and progress to you. Welcome back, Wolfpack. It is the Warzone Wednesday. And it is the 8th of January, still just. Yes, indeed. Thank you to each and one of you for being with me. I'm Drew. This is the Sigma Prepper channel, if you're wondering where you are and what you're doing. And we're talking about psychological and information warfare tactics as part of our Surviving World War III podcast. If you've missed the other 4, they're linked in the description below. So please do check that out. You'll see them all in order as well. I've put them in a podcast for you to make it nice and easy to flow through. So we're just returning back from our midway break. So getting ourselves a brew. So love to each and every one of you. Love, peace and progress to this beautiful pack we've formed here. Love to you all. Thank you for your support tonight. I know you've unbuckled to go to the kitchen to go and get yourself a new drink, but we're going to have to buckle back up again, I'm afraid. But thank you to everybody live in the chat. Thank you to our super chatterers. Whoosh! Really appreciate you. Tell the boy, absolutely epic. Sandy kicking the night off for the 2s. And of course, Emma giving us a good night. $5. So thank you to you, Emma. Thank you to you, Sandy. Thank you to you. Whoosh! Tell the boy, really appreciate you, man. So thank you so very much. No sitting by fires eating squares on sticks. Absolutely not banned again. That's why we're here, man. That's why we're here. In fact, oh yes, I do want to, yes, go to site. So I'm just clicking on my sigmaprepper.com link on here. I was just going to say, hence my tagline, when SHTF don't end up around a campfire eating squirrels on sticks. Instead, get rocking with Sigma Prepper, get prepared with me and all my cool stuff. Look, I spent ages on Christmas Day, was it? The day before Christmas Day, updating all the dates and everything, man. Took years. Took 8 years to go and enjoy. You got to check out the Wolfpack Anthem as well, 2025, because that's got the video that goes with it, man. Yeah, it's like the music video to our Wolfpack Anthem. So get yourself over there. It's got all the links you need as well, so there's no excuses, right? Talking of Discord as well, don't forget you can get yourself in there free of charge. It don't cost you nothing. With a K and gang signs. Yeah. Check out Paul JW in the house. Yeah. Let's give you some Wolfpack respect. Did I give? Yes, I did. So thank you for joining. So you should do what Paul's done, right? He knows the score. Get in there, right? Because you've got all this wealth of information, absolute knowledge base of prepping, survival, you name it, is in there. If it's not in there, get it in there. If you know what you're talking about, welcome to the Wolfpack. Yeah. Stop messing about. Also, talking of messing about, make sure you've done proper poly, votey. Live in the chat, you'll see it. Which of these do you trust the least for accurate information? We'll be calling the results on this later at the end of the show. Don't forget as well to vote. Mainstream media, social media platforms, government announcements, or influencers / independent voices. Which of them do you trust the least to get your information from? Don't forget as well, it is our very own beautiful moderator of all moderators, Daily Survival. My beautiful Chrissy. Whew. Love to you, honey. Happy birthday. Chief of Security, my Pepper Potts. Love to you, honey. Happy birthday. In America, it's still her birthday, even though in 7 minutes it's not going to be. Cheers, everyone. Quick thing as well, Robert McNamara mentioned there's loads of adverts, which theoretically is good, but it's not good for you. So what I've done is I've found a little setting that I can do, and I can change the ads to be conservative. It was unbalanced before. There's one that's like what everyone else has it on, which is like epic. I have it on balanced. I've now moved it to conservative, Robert. So let me know if you've got a limited number of ads getting in the way, because I appreciate it can be annoying. Talking of annoying, going to go on about this again. Watch now, winter prepping guide. Yeah, if you just become a member or a Patreon member, you'll see it on there, right? It's free for you to download as the winter prepping guide. It's a 42-page book. I spent ages writing it, so you might as well take advantage of it because it's free. Despite the fact that I've got no sponsors, I'm 100% independent, no networks, no paid adverts. Oops, I'm now monetized after like 3 years. Finally, like 2 weeks ago, I'm monetized. And thank you to everyone who's taken advantage of that with the super chats tonight. No external funding, no rich mummies from daddies, no affiliates or partners, no controlled opposition being paid by the powers that be to misinform people and all this kind of business, right? It's just you and me. These are the ways that you can help. All the links are in the description. And I tell you what, Patreon's a great way to do it. I've got a lot of videos behind the scenes I'm planning to put on that as well, and the upper levels of the YouTube members as well. Thank you to you. So yeah, patreon.com/SigmaPrepper is the way you can keep me going. It's been a struggle, been running on fumes for a long time now, but it's because of these people that I haven't actually completely and utterly failed like the powers that be would like me to be. Whoosh! Love you, all of you. Thank you for keeping me rocking. And again, if you want to see your name up here, get yourself over to patreon.com because that's what these people did. And they are loving it. Yes, they are. Links in the description if you want to join in the fun. It's completely free to do other things like hit the like button, share videos on your social media to help us get out there to the masses. Right. Now we've got all that nonsense out of the way. Cheers, everyone. Right. Don't forget, Warzone Wednesdays, you've got to be wearing your onesies, right? Because we're talking about uncomfortable topics. So it's really important more than ever that you're as comfortable as possible while talking about uncomfortable topics. So you wonder why I'm wearing a hooded onesie. It's an all-in-one onesie. Yeah, that's why. It's the rule. The other rule is in the break time you get yourself a brew. So I hope you've done that. Yummy. So let's get back into it then. Don't forget, we've done the first 3 categories of psychological and information warfare. These are just my own categories I've made up, right? So if people think that I've categorized them wrong, then please do let me know, because this is the way I've done it in my book. Okay? But it's not too late to change. If anyone knows any more than I do about this stuff, then please do let me know. Anyway, so next up then is exploiting digital platforms. Wow, is that happening in the world all of the time? I think so. So let's get into this one then. Phew, buckle up. Social media manipulation. Hopefully you can still reach the like button while you're buckled up in your seat. If you... it's going to be safe if you just unclip it quickly to lean forward and hit the like button, then you can clip back in again. I'll let you. I am the captain of this ship. I've given you permission. So if anyone gives you any hassle, any Karens come hassling, tell them Drew told you. Social media manipulation, amplifying narratives using bots or algorithms. Deep fake propaganda. Oh, AI is going to make this an epic thing for 2025. Mark my words. AI generated videos, audio, deceiving, discrediting. Big data and analytics, right? This is again feeds back into that, perception management form of Kurt Lewin's research spiral system of using the big data analytics is the feedback loop back in to understand how people are feeling about stuff, understand what people's consensus is on stuff, right? In order to then understand how you need to coerce, subvert, manipulate, guide, and so on, right? So using behavioral analysis data to target individuals with tailored messaging, which is important as well. So by understanding what makes them who they are, you can really use NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, right? Where you can form the way that you say things to certain types of people, and it will really trigger certain areas of them knowingly and things very strategically. It's a big thing in sales and marketing, right? So cognitive overload, this is a classic thing. Obama went on about this openly in some little, he thought was a behind the scenes little seminar thing, tuxedo event, right? And he talked about this cognitive overload, bombarding the public with excessive or conflict information. And he made some remark along the lines of, when everything that people see is a complete lie, we would have succeeded in our job. Something like that. Narrative laundering, this is 100% on steroids and fentanyl at the same time, happening on a daily basis, the narrative laundering, right? This is like their new little trick, and they think they're so clever, but it's not even. So narrative laundering is using third-party sources to legitimize misinformation. I'm not going to rant about it now. We'll get into it when we get into details of each of these. Don't forget, we're going to break them down, right? So information gatekeeping, monopolizing search results. Oh, God. Deplatforming dissenting voices. Yeah. Everyone knows someone who's suffered from that. Hacking and leaking wraps up the exploiting digital platforms with things like releasing sensitive data with a spin to mislead and destabilize, right? So a little bit like I said earlier when we were talking about how when things are like some policy leaked or some bill that's going around Congress that's been leaked to the press or whatever, again, this hacking and leaking thing is actually part of a psychological warfare tactic. It's part of a psyop to either to gain feedback in that part of the big data analytics as part of the Kurt-Lewin spiral to manipulate and normalize and solidify and freeze. You know what I mean? Hacking and leaking is a big part of that, yeah. For misleading people and then gaining reach. So let's go through them one by one then in detail. We'll get through it. So social media manipulation, let's break it down. So it's using social media platforms to amplify narratives, shape public opinion and control discourse. So the execution methods that you would expect to see within that are things like bot networks. We did touch on that earlier on. Automated accounts and bots, mass posting to boost specific narratives. But this is more specifically social media based form of that because there are email versions and other versions as well. There's obviously publications, news publications, both via satellite, you know, as in cable news, as well as newspaper news as well, right? So this is specifically social media where we got bots that are just posting stuff about, you know, I'm not even going to list the things that they'd post about. So astroturfing, we looked at that earlier. This is one of the methods that they use, the fake campaigns to stimulate grassroots movements to make it look, you know, the BLM, the Greta Thunberg types, the Just Oil or Stop Oil, whatever it is another classic one that's made to look like a grassroots thing, but it's not, it's just astroturfing. So the algorithm exploitation, leveraging platform algorithms to prioritize divisive or emotionally charged content, absolutely classic. It's even things like algorithm exploitation. You remember Elon Musk made a mention of that where he was talking about when he was using AI to do a search for a white person or someone from German from World War II, and it would throw up some black person randomly, and it would just refuse to do any. This was it the Google one, or I think it was when the Google launched their image creation tool, and it was a complete flop because it was so woke it wasn't even funny. It was like, you know, the algorithm was so manipulated that it just would refuse to do a normal white person. It would just had to be a Chinese person or a black person. Is another version of this algorithm exploitation, right? The division. Don't forget the cultural warfare is all part of these exploits, I'm going to call them, right? And so things like the algorithm exploitation, although it's part of social media manipulation, it's how they achieve it itself is the tools used to achieve the cultural warfare, which is breaking down cultural norms to create a lack of cohesion amongst what would normally be a I can't think of the word, homogenous nation or something. So deepfake propaganda, and this is something that I think is going to be accelerating big time with all the AI stuff. I mean, do you know, to be honest, between you and me and YouTube, right, I did get a guideline strike last year. There's nothing on my account now because you can do some exam and have it removed, right? I ran a media company and I used to do stock video for iStock Photo as a silver awarded contributor. And I say that because there's not many people who are silver awarded to Getty Images, right? But my point with that is that to do that, you have to know so much about copyright, so much about what you can and can't do, you know, what's allowed and what's not when it comes to media creation and stuff, right? I've spent a lot of time in things like media as well, with advertising, even in newspapers, as I told you earlier, which you learn a lot of things about copyright law, things you can and can't say in publications. It's quite strict. It's stricter than people think, right? And so the AI generated side of stuff being manipulated is I got a community guideline strike for what they called misinformation, which was a tiny clip that I had. It was just a joke. I was smiling when I said it, but it was a clip of Kamala Harris doing a speech. And the assumption by this speech was quite clearly that someone had had a little bit too much of the you-know-what. But it was because it was manipulated, the video was slowed down to make her appear more slurred than she was. And so therefore, I was clobbered with a strike for that, because even though I didn't know, there was no warning. It's like, well, it's just a clip of her going on about something a bit weird that is quite funny, with the music I had behind it, and that was quite funny. At least I thought it was funny. And this is why, you know, it's funny, isn't it? Because they find it offensive, I find it funny, but that's why I'm happier than they are. Right? Because I find it funny and they think it's offensive. That's why I'm happier than these people. So it's not a bad thing. Anyway. So I took the shame, you know, I took it up the you-know-what, unlubed and everything, man. It was completely unlubed. I tried disputing it and ting, no lube for you, Drew. No lube for you. Up it went. Oh, yeah. Anyway. So that was essentially a deep fake. But was it? But was it? We don't know, right? YouTube thinks it was. So this is dodgy ground, because this is I'm labouring this slide because I've come foul of it, right? By having a laugh, God forbid, right? Mason Taze, right? Sorry, I was just having a laugh. But what you're going to find is a lot of people coming unstuck because they're sharing things that they think's funny or is like whatever, but then they find out afterwards that it's been manipulated, or it's a deep fake, or it's just propaganda that they're just reposting accidentally, not knowing, and they're helping to fuel the whole thing, right? So, and with the AI generated videos out there now, and the audio stuff as well, where you can voice clone people with only 30 seconds of voice sample, do you know, shit like this. It's getting dodgy, man. Fake speeches, right? Videos of leaders and influencers saying things they never said. I've seen a load of stuff like that. Right? I was going to give you an example, but even me giving you the example of the person that said it is dodgy for me to even say. But anyway, fabricated events, creating fake footage of protests, violence, or declarations of war. See that a lot. See a lot of things made up about like North Korea, and then you find out that wasn't North Korea. That was a military drill that some other country did like 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? And they said, oh, North Korea's going to kill us all, right? It's classic. So misinformation amplification, using deepfakes to make disinformation more believable. So just extenuating it and just exaggerating it and stuff, really fueling it. So big data analytics, again, I touched on this quite a lot earlier, talking about how things are gathered, and to understand people and harvest that information is very valuable. It's the next oil is information, right? It's the next gold mine. So yeah, harvesting vast amounts of data to predict, influence, or manipulate individual behavior. This is like precog, yeah. Everyone's watched Minority Report. If you haven't watched it, and if you haven't watched it and no one else is on it, I strongly suggest you get in here and someone, where is it? Is it in the public lounge area? I think it is. We've got a whole channel here called SHTF Themed Movies. Minority Report, everybody, get in there, right? Get in there. Discord, community server, free to join, links in the description. Yeah, jump over to the SHTF theme movies. I might change the icon actually for this room because the clapperboard's not very. But get in there, and someone add in their what do you call it? Minority Report, would you? Because I think that's quite a key one to know that goes in quite well with this. So psychographic targeting. So it's like demographics. and sort of like psychological analysis of people combined into one, so you get an understanding of who people are, what makes them tick, you know, what their preferences are, what their watch history was. This is why it's so important to get information on what you watch and how long you watch it for and what you're into, because that can feed into knowing then how they can subvert you. If they don't know what you're looking at, what you're watching and where you're going, how do they know where they need to be putting these messages in there to subvert your thinking? Do you know what I mean? It's pretty basic shit. So behavioral analysis, predicting actions based on online habits. You know, this is where people get nabbed, people like Funky Prepper, because they look at the current trends of what he's talking about. And there's also people that are gathering around him talking about that and getting him fueled by that and getting angry by that. And then he's getting angrier by it, and he's getting validated by the people going, yeah, Funky Prepper, you go get him, man. You tell him what for. Yeah, you should be our leader. Yeah. And then he's seeing this going, yeah, maybe I should. Yeah, let's fucking go. And so the intelligence services watch that shit, and that behavioral analysis, they can just see where that ends up, right? They can see where that incitement's going to end. They can see where that agitation's going to end up, and they can see what the purpose of it is as well. They're not silly. And so when they pick someone up, it's because they've done that behavioral analysis, and they will look at what they're looking at, and they'll see all the dodgy people that they talk to on a daily basis and go, oh, fucking hell. Right, and they've got AI algorithms that literally his job is to do nothing else but to like see who's going to be the next serial killer, right? You know, this is why I joke to people and say, if you're planning on taking over the government, believe me, they're going to know you're going to do it before you do. Do you know what I mean? Before you even do anything. I mean, don't forget in the UK, there was the instance where there was a protest coming up for something or other, and the government went around the night before the protests, right? And they picked all the main dudes and dudettes up and dude in betweeners up who were going to be a big part of that rally the next day. They literally went round there and just picked them all up the night before, right? Job done, we'll just keep them in the cell all day. What? Right? Behavioural analysis, they knew they were going to be going, right? This is where things like the devices come in at protests. This is why I warn people, when you go to protest, right, they have things like them scanning, not a razor thingy, a razor fish. What's the thing they use? They got a scanner thing that it like acts like a cell tower. It's a spoof cell tower basically, and the police have them in their vans. And when you go to these rallies and protests, your mobile phone, because who doesn't take their mobile phone with them, it basically connects to that cell tower, thinking it's a cell tower, but it's not. It's a spoof tower. I forget the name of them. Sorry. And it kind of like pulls all the data off your phone essentially and all your messages. So it can reverse engineer who organised the event, right? Because they just got to pick one person up, get one text message from someone, and their software that picks it up by just attending that rally, right? Everyone's phones gets sucked basically by this spoof tower that the cops have, and the software in it's super genius, right? It's AI driven, so it just looks at all. If you think it through about how something propagates, and like one dude has an idea, oh, I reckon we should do a rally, and oh yeah, you should send a message to Bob about it. Yeah, don't forget Jeff as well. Yeah, Sally's got a whole bunch of people, she'll get together. Okay, Bob, Sally, Jeff, Bosh, message. Right now, Bob, Sally and Jeff go off and get their little dudes and dudettes and dude in betweeners. Yeah, we're going to do a rally on the 15th, da, da, da. We start arranging it, and then they send their text message out to their people, and their people, their people, and so on. And that's how that viral thing happens, right? It's like exponential, like the way a virus spreads. Hence why they call it viral, right? Anyway, so, but the point is that if the spoof tower just gets hold of one of those messages, it just reverse engineers all those messages back to the originating source of where it all stops. And it's like, Matey Boy. Yeah, it's got to be Matey Boy is the organizer then, isn't it? Yeah, they don't need you to tell them. They know you're going there before you do. It's so funny. It's like taking candy from children. Anyway, I'm sure while I've been babbling on, you've already read the last one for yourself. I do apologise. This is supposed to be like zipping through. Did I? Right, okay. So cognitive overload, right? This is... like, I can't mention the person's name, but he mentioned something called a polycrisis, and that's basically what this is designed to do. So cognitive overload is all about overwhelming the public with excessive or conflictive information to induce confusion or apathy, where you just don't care about it anymore. This is what happened in 2020 quite a lot, right? Where there was an awful lot of confusion created, and there was a lot of sources saying it's going to do this and don't do that, and do this but don't do that, but then 6 foot, but then 3 foot, but then if you're sitting down it's all right, but if you're eating it's not. And if it's like, what? Don't forget what I always tell you. If something seems too stupid to be stupid, it's probably not. If it's too stupid to be stupid, it's probably not, right? It's something else going on there, right? And so part of it could be the cognitive overload they're trying to put on people. When people say, oh man, it's just stuff going on, I don't even know where to look. It's like this going on. You got this in the Philippines. You got a South Korean guy doing this. You got Trump getting shot. You got a volcano going off, and now we got a plane crash. You know, this is all part of that cognitive overload. It just makes people go, do you know what? I just can't be dealing with it. I'm just not even going to look at it. Well, guess what? They don't want you to look at it. Why don't they want you to look at it? Because there's something really important going on that they don't want you to see. So they're flooding it with all this shit. Yeah, they're just creating a haystack for your needle that you're looking for, right? There wasn't one there before, but it's like, shit, that needle's looking a bit obvious at the moment, so we need to get some hay on it, right? Get hay in, right? That's basically what we're chatting about here. So I don't know, we don't need to labor that. I think you get it, right? So next up then, we are zooming through. Don't worry, I'm sorry. I know it's a difficult one for everyone to get through. And I know my neurodivergence is a bit weird for people, and it's like difficult because this is like complicated information. But anyway, narrative laundering. Oh man, this is just like epic. I'm telling you, I know I've said this. I know I've said this about nearly every one of them so far. But I'm telling you, the narrative laundering. This is the one I mentioned earlier, and I said about how, you know, the mainstream think they're so clever with this because it's kind of like a new idea-ish. It's a new flavour of an old idea. If you look at the 33 Strategies of War, for example, by whatever his name is, someone in the live chat's probably writing it now, Robert Greene. 33 Strategies of War, anyway. I think it's in there somewhere. In a way, right? But they've got a new flavour on it, yeah. Which is basically, to cut a long story short, right, using third-party sources to legitimize false or misleading information. This is how they do everything now. So what they do is they get some... There'll be some guy who... Okay, so the powers that be tell the mainstream, we need this story to be out there, right? But it can't seem to be coming from the mainstream because it's going to lie. They're held to a certain level of accountability by the public in a way, and if the trust is damaged any more than it already is, they're like literally lights out, curtains, fucking ABC wouldn't want to be here, right? So they've got to be careful. So what they do, and this is why it's happening more and more now, because they're like literally skating on thin ice as it fucking is. So they'll get some dodgy journalist from some random forum website somewhere random, and they'll basically leave some dodgy fucking answering message on this journalist's phone saying, oh God, special story, but we can't release it because he's one of our clients, so we can't talk about it, but it's a killing story. And then they'll give it to this journalist, and either knowingly or not, this journalist will then post that on his shitty forum or on some website or in some pamphlet newspaper given out on a street for free or some shit. But then what it allows the mainstream to do is to point at it and say, look, see there, this news story, as, you know, reported by whatever, saying that Trump did this or Biden didn't do that or whatever it might be, right? Or Russia's done this or Russia's doing that. You see? And so you're laundering what you're doing. You're putting the narrative out there that you want out there, and then you're laundering it through someone else. You see? Hence, narrative laundering. Right? So this is how it would look, the sort of methods of execution, the foreign media placement. I kind of touched on that. Planting stories in foreign outlets and later citing them domestically. Yeah, classic. NGO involvement is a big one. Because the NGO involvement is a big one with the climate change. That's how they get the narratives out there that they need, that people are, or scientists say, experts say, yeah, experts agree, yeah, surveys amongst scientists suggest. Are you with me? Right, that's narrative laundering. Right. So partnering with independent organisations to promote biased reports. The social media amplification, again, like we saw earlier on, right? Citing and verified posters, because once you get that going, you can then use your bots. Don't forget, we've got our bots that we can use, right? To like start churning out, yeah, man, did you see that story about fucking matey boy on da-da-da, right? And then everyone's talking about it. But it's all based on the original story, which was bullshit in the first place, right? It was some answer machine message left by some, you know, CNN guy or whatever, or CIA guy to some random journalist somewhere to say, hey, report on this, man. It's an epic, it's going to be a break-in story, man. This could be your career break story. Fucking hell. Anyway, next. Come on, Drew. Go on with it. Fuck me. Information gatekeeping. So, wow. Where do I start with this one? I've got to fly through it. Sorry. Controlling or limiting access to information by monopolizing digital spaces. Right. Fuck me. This is exactly where... I mean, gatekeeping, a form of that is obviously people who get unsubscribed from my channel without asking to be unsubscribed from my channel is a classic example of gatekeeping, right? That's more shadow banning, but it's still... And again, look, search engine manipulation, prioritizing certain narratives and search results. You know, we've seen that as well when you're searching for a white family and it's like black people, you know what I mean? Or, you know, I'll give you the example as well. Search engine manipulation is where, as well as what I mentioned earlier, with things like searching for Trump, and it will give you negative stories. Search for Hillary back then, and it will give you all the positive stuff about Hillary over that week or whatever, trending in the news. And so, but a good one was actually when, do you remember when Tulsi Gabbard, who was the Hawaii governor, but she was running for president, right, alongside Hillary Clinton. And not many people know this, but I'll tell you this story, right, because this is important to do with search and manipulation, because it can come in certain different forms. And this was the first time that Tulsi Gabbard was going on to public TV, right, and she would absolutely aced it, right. Now, her PR team and marketing media team, and I've done similar things like this for my clients before through my business consultancy, sales marketing company, right, where you've got a campaign, you've got a strategy, you've got like a big event coming up, and you want to capitalize on that. You want to sort of capitalize on that momentum of the event. You know what I mean? So that if you do a good job at the event, obviously people are going to then start searching for your name, and then you want to make sure when people are searching for your name, you're going to come up and ride that wave of popularity, right? So that was the plan. So Tulsi Gabbard's team were all ready to go. They had Google ad campaign set up where they were paying Google ads. So if anyone's searching for Tulsi Gabbard, Governor Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard spelt in various different misspelling ways and things like this, right? And other nuances. So they set it all up ready so that anyone searching for that, you capture that, funnel it in, and Tulsi Gabbard would go straight to her homepage and you could check it out, vote for her and all that shit. What happened though, while Tulsi Gabbard, as soon as she went live on CNN and they were doing their debate and all the rest of it, with Hillary there, Tulsi there and all the rest of it, and she was just killing it, and she called Hillary Clinton out as well in that event, and no one knew who she was. She's like, everyone was like, who's this woman, man, ex-military, fucking, you know, beautiful looking, right, cool hair thing going on and all that shit. I love Tulsi Gabbard. But, do you know what? Google had removed all of her ads under some messed up policy of something that there was a mistake. Oh, sorry, our mistake. It was an automatic thing, the protection thing that had disabled the ads, but we've fixed it now 2 days later. So basically, it's like purposefully made sure that nobody could find her as part of that shadow banning, but it's actually part of that search engine manipulation. Do you see? So it can come in different forms. That's coming from the top. Only Google can turn those ads off, man. Like no one else is going in there to do that. Blatant, man. So hacking and leaking, right? We all know about that, don't we? So gaining unauthorized access to sensitive information and releasing it to manipulate narratives. I bet you typing in there right now all the different things you can think of in the news even recently that's been going on with this. Hack and spin, selectively leaking data with commentary to shape public opinion, right? God, I can't even... I feel so straitjacketed in the things I feel I can't talk about out loud. Fake leaks, so fabricating documents or data to discredit opponents. This is the one I was going to talk about and give an example of that's too dangerous to do, so I won't. Fucking hell. Timed releases are coordinating leaks for key events to maximize impact. This is a classic one they use because it's very subtle, but they'll just wait until a natural, organic story comes up on a subject they're waiting to pounce on, and they'll have all them files ready to go, man. Yeah, they just need the trigger to be able to. It's just not enough on its own. You know, when the cops say, oh, you know, we need enough evidence to get a sure bet, otherwise they're just going to release him on, like, a warning or whatever shit, so we got to make sure we've got epic. It's that same thing, right? You need to hold it back and wait until you've got loads of stuff so you can just go whoomph, right? And sometimes having that extra little bit of leak data as well to go along with it can add some credibility and a little bit of flex to your assertions. Finally, is it finally? Nearly. Undermining trust then. So we've basically stormed through. How long have we been going? Hit the like button to show your respect for my commitment to the cause so far. I hope you're able to follow on. Not able to follow on. I don't mean like you're sitting there in crash helmets and a box of crowns. I just mean as in able to follow on along because I'm trying to bosh through, right? And I know I can be maybe boring to some people. So anyway, and this is a difficult topic to be exciting and interesting because we're not talking about, you know, like drone warfare and like, you know, all the technology of how they're going to come and get us, right? It's a very different topic this week, but it's equally as important. And this is where the way I've categorized this with the 6 categories I came up with, the undermining trust part is like the penultimate phase. So the ultimate phase is the actual control and doing it, yeah, getting it done, having the effects. The undermining trust is the bit that you got to put in place before that, right? So these sort of tactics include things like divide and conquer. We're seeing that epically across everything, whether it's gender, race, religion, you name it. Stoking divisions within groups to weaken unity. Just think BLM, think, you know, LGBTQ, all that stuff is designed to divide. And when people are divided, they're much easier to, yeah. So demoralization, big part of that. You got to make people feel like there's no hope. So what's the point? Might as well just go along with it. Undermining morale and confidence in leaders or institutions. Psychological operations as well. PsyOps, classic one, all the time. Coordinated campaigns to influence emotions and decision making. I would say 90% of the mainstream news stories you'll see are PsyOps. 100%. There's no need, no reason, no objective, no logical purpose for that news story to even be there. When you travel around the world like I've done, right, I've been to 40 odd countries. I've lived in about 5 or 6 different countries around the world, and I'm talking around the world, not just like next door country, but like third world countries, let's say. Right? You start to realize that the news you get in different countries is different about the different countries. It's like you start to see that they're all in their own little mainstream news bubbles in each country. Once you start venturing out of them bubbles and you look back on the other one, it's like, oh, bloody hell, that's interesting. How come they're talking about that like that there? But when you go there, they ain't talking about that or telling their people anything to do with that. And you start seeing the chinks in that armour, you see. It's all part of that, you know. So anyway, fabricated consensus. It's a little bit like what we talked about before with the engineered consensus, right? So, but the fabricated consensus using bots or controlled media to create the illusion of agreement. And 97% of scientists agree. Social fragmentation. Encouraging polarization to make collective action harder. There's a lot of that went on in 2020. The social fragmentation, you know, again, an easy way to divide people. That was those who were wearing masks versus those that weren't, those that were getting poked and those that were not. Crisis fatigue, overloading people with continuous crisis to foster apathy or paralysis. This is just literally draining people down. So let's check out number 1 then, divide and conquer, and get into it for this one, which is the penultimate one. We've only got one more after this, and I think there's only 3 in there, so not long now. Divide and conquer then. So definition: creating divisions within groups or societies to weaken unity and solidarity. Exploiting fault lines. So lines that are already there, things that are already contentious issues, things that are already sort of like triggering things they're the ones you want to push on, you know, the pain points that you want to find, and then dial it up a bit, right? Misinformation campaigns, you know, spreading rumours of false narratives to pit groups against each other, right? Like calling people murderers and that just because they're calling people far right, and people call him homophobes and all this thing. These are violence inciting things that people are doing by calling people those names, because it will incite someone else to want to do something about it. If someone actually thinks they're a homophobe, or someone actually thinks they're racist, or someone actually thinks that they're a transphobic, then maybe someone else is going to then do violence on that person as a result. And so by calling someone that unlawfully or for no reason, you're actually the one inciting violence on that person. Do you see? So you've got to be careful. That's the way I see it. So, and that would be considered spreading a rumor or false narrative to pit groups against each other, or individuals against each other, to create that division within groups, which is even more important if you're trying to subvert the group and dismantle it from within. We looked at those tactics earlier before, don't forget, right? So polarization tactics then, so framing issues in us versus them, like I said earlier as the example, do you know what I mean? It's like the ones wearing a mask versus those that are not, the ones that are waiting in line versus the ones that are not, you know what I mean? You know, those that are on benefits and those that are not, those that are disabled and those that are not. I mean, they're just doing it across every line. Elderly versus young, even they try and create division amongst the generations, you know, the boomers versus Gen Xers. They always try and create divisions amongst as many possible slices that they can, so that they just basically, the government can become the daddy. So demoralization, kind of talked about this quite a lot earlier, so we don't have to labour this too much, but again, typical stuff like highlighting of failures. I mean, think about Trump and Biden, right? Highlighting failures, publicising mistakes or setbacks, never talking about positive stuff. You can mention many people in that same situation. Planting doubts, questioning motives or competence. Oh, they're a dictator, they're going to take over the world, although at the moment it's looking like it with Greenland and shit, innit? Fucking hell, we ain't going there. So manipulating outcomes, rigging events to ensure unfavourable results for targeted groups. You know, we saw a lot of that going on in Ukraine in 2014, if you know what I mean. So psychological operations, this is a big one. Coordinated campaigns designed to influence emotions, attitudes and behaviours. This is ongoing all the time. You got to watch out for this. And the way they execute that is stuff like disseminating fear, spreading threats to destabilise mental and emotional resilience. You're just making people so gloomy all the time. We're going on about the inflation and the corruption and the prices going up and all the new laws all the time and all the restrictions all the time and new policies all the time. It's just like, targeted messaging, you know, crafting narratives tailored to specific demographics like we looked at earlier. We looked at target messaging as one of the other tactics. Saturation campaigns, another one, repeating key messages across all media to embed them deeply. We talked about that in length and how important that is to create that psychosis level of perception management and subversion. Super important stuff. So fabricated consensus, this is what we were talking about earlier. This is a real big one, because if you can get people to feel like they have to be a part of a group, that's the group think thing. That's the identity politics as a psychological strategy coming under identity politics. Is designed to make people not want to be an individual. It's designed to make people feel like they want to be part of a group. And so by you being the one who gets to decide the rules of who can be a part of that group and who can't by the way you act and the things you say and the things you believe, then you can then fabricate the consensus within that group by people just wanting to conform to it, even though they don't believe it, even up to the level of cognitive dissonance levels of, you know, believing something that they know not to be true. So bot armies again used in that, right? To just make people believe that everyone else is thinking that, everyone else is voting that, so I might as well vote that as well. You know, those swing vote things are really powerful because it only takes a small amount to flip them over the edge. And so if you can just send some bots out there to flood everywhere going, I'm voting for Kamala, I'm voting for Kamala, I'm voting for Kamala, you can convince everybody around you that everyone else is voting for Kamala. I don't know, I don't watch the news, I don't know who this Kamala Shamala person is, I don't know who this Trump Schmump person is, but I like to vote every time, so I don't know, everyone seems to be voting Kamala, so I guess I should vote Kamala, right? It's amazingly powerful. Don't underestimate it, right? Jeez, man, not everyone's IQ is, above room temperature, right? And so, that's not fair to say, because if people aren't interested in politics, there's no reflection on their intelligence. But I just mean as in, just people aren't bothered about it, and they make their decisions in a different way than maybe you and I do. That's all. So we're not going to judge them, but you just have to be aware that this is going on, and it does work on a lot of people. You'll be surprised, right? People are lazy nowadays. They just want to go along with what everyone else is saying, just so they fit in. Like I said, when you do the identity politics game for fucking as many years as they've been doing it on us so long, you are made to feel like if you don't conform to the masses of the group, then you don't belong anywhere. Yeah. So media overrepresentation, highlighting favourable opinions while ignoring dissent, social proof, deploying influencers or celebrities to endorse narratives. How much did we see that happening with Kamala Harris, talking that as a good example with all the, millions that she paid people to come and promote her on stage and things, and Mariah Carey and Jay-Z, and basically P. Diddy list came. The P. Diddy list was paid to promote Kamala Harris, or what was some people paid her. That's interesting. Anyway, so social fragmentation, we're seeing that a big time, encouraging polarization to make collective action more difficult, right? So again, when groups get together with the good plan and they want to do something or whatever, then you need to fragment that big time, because that solidarity and that that echo chamber, it will start to ferment, right? And will start to seed and grow and things. And you need to get in the way of that big time. You need to subvert that. You need to get in there, and you need to, bust it up. So echo chambers, creating environments where individuals are exposed only to reinforcing viewpoints. So if anyone who's talking outside of that, sorry, mate, you boy, off your pop. If you've got to cancel them, delete them, shadow ban them, whatever, do it. So conflict narratives, pushing stories that demonise the other side. Again, we've talked about that all the time. They talk about such and such, doing this, and their manifesto said they were this and they were that, and they were white, they were Christian, and they were male, and they were okay. And yeah, undermining shared values, challenging unifying traditions and institutions, which are all part of that social fragmentation, part of that cultural warfare thing. Yeah, sort of veers on the side of that. Crisis fatigue, I did go on about this in the list of it, but overloading people with continuous crises to foster apathy or paralysis. I told you about the polycrisis thing, which is a good method for that, and it does just wear people down to the point they just can't be asked anymore, and they'll just go along with whatever because they're just drained, and I just would rather just go along with it than even try and figure out what's going on, because it's a shit show. Right? Crisis stacking, so highlighting multiple simultaneous threats. So if this happens and you're seeing so many things going on that seem all quite intense, it's crisis fatigue they're trying to do to you, so don't let it win. Yeah, gain strength, get a brew, right? Add a few extra spoonfuls of coffee in your coffee if you need to, right? Cheers, everyone. Love, peace and progress to this beautiful wolf pack with us. And I'm sorry I haven't even looked at what's going on in the live chat, but like I say, we need to bang through it because it's long, innit? So let's get into it then, because we have only got one left now and there's only 4 in it. So how cool is that? How long have we been going? 2 hours and 22 minutes. What's the chances of that? When I look down at the timer, it happens to be all the 2s. Hear me now. Love to you, Sandy. Thank you for your £2.22 super chat. I just always assume there's nobody here listening because I haven't seen any super chats happen or anything pop up anywhere, so I do apologise for ignoring the chat. So last one up then is the infiltrate. Look at the blue ticks we've earned ourselves. Well, I should have put gold stars there, really, shouldn't I? By now we've earned gold stars, haven't we? Look how far we've come. So let's get into it then. Last one, the ultimate psychological and information warfare tactic, grouped up into infiltration and control. Bosh. So what we got then? Look at that, slide 74. See that at the top there? This is literally 074.png file name. Infiltration and control then. We're breaking it down into this, right? Infiltration of movements. So placing agents in groups, to basically get in the back door and figure out what's going on. So you can then feed that back into how you're going to subvert them, right? With your plan. You've got to infiltrate them first. So sabotage from within, which is a good one. Russians have been doing that for years. Yuri Bezdomov has talked about that. Right? So disrupting organizations through internal conflicts or inefficiency. Yuri Bezdomov was an old secret spy from Russia who then became a double agent for CIA and revealed a whole lot of shit. Agent provocateurs, we talked about that earlier, inciting violence to delegitimize protests or movements. Again, we talked about that earlier as one of the tactics used for something else, so we're going to look at that in more detail. So funding subversion, supporting divisive or controversial figures to weaken opposition. This is like giving them a platform or funding them heavily and things like this, right? So infiltration of movements, then covertly embedding operatives in organizations or movements to gather intelligence or steer actions, right? So spy recruitment type stuff, yeah. You can get people in there undercover, monitor the activities, you can gain their trust, build the relationships and hopefully get in front of what they call the man, the one with the money, the thingy bob and the need. The money, the man. Oh, sorry. The money, the authority, and the need, right, is what they need as the person, as a decision maker. The target in the leadership, so these are the people I'm talking about, the mans, identifying and neutralizing influential leaders, because they're the ones who are like basically making it difficult for the powers that be to do what they want to do, so you've got to take them out. So sabotage from within is a big part of that. Demoralization is a big part of it. Sabotaging as well, and misinformation campaigns is a great way to... and leaking documents, you can use that. We looked at that earlier as one of the tactics. You can do that leak thing as well, a way of sabotaging from within. You can leak something about the leader that looks bad to his followers and try and disrupt it and divide it that way. So agent provocateurs, again, we did talk about it before with the planting the evidence and things, so we don't need to cover that again. But funding subversion, financially supporting controversial divisive groups to weaken broader opposition. Look at how much America's sent Ukraine, for example. Oh dear. So execution methods include funding extremists, propping up radical factions to delegitimize movements, donations with strings, Biden with the whole, get it done and otherwise you ain't getting your $1 million or whatever, right? Donations with strings, offering money, conditions that shape the group's actions. Get rid of that judge. Creating dependence, making organizations reliant on external funding to control them. And to be honest, this is how even influencers can become controlled opposition, because they get into money troubles and they get approached, and they become dependent on their YouTube channel as their income, for example, when they get to a certain size, and they say, look, we can either shut you down and you have zero money. You go from like $70,000 a month or whatever, like someone like Canadian Prepper's probably pulling in about 50 grand a month at this point, right? So imagine him approaching him and say, listen, matey boy, I know you like what you're doing, Nat, but sit down a minute. We need to have a chat, right? Because you got 1 point whatever million people following your ass. So we need to make sure you're saying the right shit, because you're a proper influencer at this point. So I know you quite liking making your 50 grand a month and all that, and your new house you're building and the other stuff your missus is going to look at the moment with your yachts and shit. But we can shut you down today, Mr. Nat Poos. If you don't do what we say, yeah, your ass is getting maced and tased and your YouTube will be no longer. So your 50 bags of sand whoosh, that you're getting per month from your channel and your survival gear and all the other stuff going on, right? He's going to be nada, niente, nothing. Or, here's a list of things that you need to talk about and a bunch of things that you don't want to be talking about. And if you talk about anything on here that's to not talk about, or you don't talk about something here that you're supposed to talk about, then to your YouTube channel, matey boy. So, creating dependence is a real... what you call it, right? And that's my absolute beauties, believe it or not, wraps up those 6 categories as I saw it to divide them into, right? Even that seemed quite a lot to get through, so I do apologise, but I couldn't see any other way of doing it without it being my usual level of detail, depth and exhaustive coverage. So if you have to watch this 3 times in a row, do it. Even I might have to watch it back myself. I'm only joking. Shaping public perception. We looked at that, don't forget. Manipulating behaviour, deception and covert subversion. You've got the exploiting digital platforms, which is getting more and more. The undermining the trust, the infiltration and control. We've covered it all there, and all the tactics within that make up the psychological and information warfare world. I hope I've given you some kind of insight into this world of fifth dimensional warfare tactics, because for the last three episodes now, this is episode 5, you'll see the podcast linked in the description below, where I've put these episodes in a podcast, so they come in orders, right? So the last couple before this, we looked at the drone warfare, and we looked at the EMP, electromagnetic warfare and stuff. And they again were from the fifth dimensional warfare tactics series, and so you can see the trend here is there's an awful lot more fifth dimensional warfare tactics happening right now. So where people don't feel like we're at war and World War III isn't on the horizon is because they don't understand we've been at war for a long time, and some of this war isn't nation to nation, it's nation to civilian. Which I'm sure you can appreciate as we've gone through tonight. What's probably most enlightening is the fact that, wow, they're doing this to us all day, every day, let alone what they are telling us that Russia's trying to do to us or China's trying to do to us. Do you know what I mean? It's amazing. So that's been your Warzone Wednesday, covering the psychological and information warfare. And this is me, Drew, for the Single Prepper. A more strategic approach to preparedness is how we roll. And that, my darlings, is slide 82. Let me know your thoughts live in the house. We have the live poll going still, so we need to call that. So I'm going to give you the last couple of minutes to get yourself in there to the live chat and get the live poll. Please do hit the like button if you haven't done already, and you'll see over on the Discord server, it's free to join that if you haven't done already. The Signal Prepper Discord server is completely free. It's a knowledge base of survival and prepping information, all categorized. I'm an obsessive categorizer, as you probably just noticed. So the main hangout here is just where we all catch up in a public lounge, right? But I did post here a screenshot of the thing for you if you're watching this afterwards. This is the live poll we've got tonight. Which of these do you trust the least for accurate information? Is that mainstream media, social media platforms, government announcements, or is it influencers or independent voices like myself? So please do, in the last minutes you've got now, get tapping away with your answer and your vote, and we'll call that in a couple of minutes, and we'll paste that onto the Discord server as well as the results. Thank you to Paul as well for joining the Discord server. Great choice, great move, and everybody will welcome you in with open paws. Whew. My New York prepper and Canadian prepper are living in Club Tropicana, innit, Telda Boy? I tell you what, with your super chats, I'm living in Tropicana tonight, Telda Boy. Yeah, I'm sipping cocktails tonight because of you. Thank you. You're not really, you're helping actually just keep the lights on and keep my software licenses valid. So thank you, Telda Boy. Cheers to you. Oh. Happy birthday again to our darling, beautiful Daily Survival. Talking of the devil. Talk of the beautiful woman. Tons of info covered tonight. You may need to rewatch for some of it to sink in if you're new to this. Yeah, I'd second that. Especially, you know, a lot of people are sort of talking away in the chat as well. And, you know, it's a lovely place to be here on the Signal Prepper channel. We're such a wonderful wolf pack. Everyone's so full of love and acceptance and understanding and sharing of knowledge. That's what we're all about. And people find that straight away when they get in the live chat. They're like, oh man, this is cool. Kick off their Crocs, you know, get their onesie on. Ching. Cup of tea. Yeah. Anyway. You can see we're not in Club Tropicana tonight. We're in a war zone, goddammit. We're in a war zone. So this has been episode 5. Don't forget there is 1, 2, 3 and 4. So work your way backwards if you want, whichever way you want to do it. But yeah, we'll have another one next week, of course. 10 p.m. UK is the usual time we go live. 5 p.m. Eastern time. 15 minutes later than I was planning to be tonight. Thank you, Carolyn Rose. I do appreciate you. I nearly had a heart attack then, Carolyn. You said I must unsubscribe, and my heart melted, and I had a little adrenaline rush and thought like a tear was about to come to my eye, and my voice was about to start to go all warbly and shit. And then she follows up with from CP. Thank you, Adoni. Thank you for not unsubscribing from me. Because if you don't do it, YouTube will do it for you. Don't forget. So if anything, you need to be clicking the bell, all notifications, to make sure you're not unsubscribed while you're not looking. Thanks, Tell the Boy Man. You've got no idea how much your super chat means to me. It's been lovely supporting the channel. And Emma as well. Thank you again, Emma. And to Sandy. And to all of the VIP Patreon members. And to the YouTube members as well. Of which Full of Hope donated quite a few. And other people have donated some memberships. So if you found yourself with a random YouTube membership, then first of all, you need to thank whoever it was. You would have got a notification telling you who gave it to you. And second thing you need to also do without any delay or any messing around is to make sure you check out the video that is waiting for you as a Patreon VIP member on Patreon or as a YouTube member on YouTube, a paying member. You will have access to the winter prepping guide by yours truly, which has just gone live to VIP patrons and YouTube members only. Even if you're only paying $2.99, $3.99 a month or whatever it is, $4 a month, you still get access to it, right? So this is the winter prepping guide. It's a complete 42-page interactive PDF for you to download. So you might as well take advantage of it now while you can. If somebody's donated you membership, you've essentially got yourself part of this as well without having to pay for it. So nicely done. So get it in there, right? Go and get it now while you can. It's absolutely jam-packed. I'm not going to show you all of it, otherwise no point in downloading it. But trust me, it's worth having. Right, so I think we're ready to call the vote now. I've stalled for long enough. Right? I've bought you enough time before the live vote comes to an end. So let's take a snapshot. We've had 70 votes, so thank you to everybody who's voted in the live poll tonight. All 70 of you. So let's take a snapshot of it. We'll end the poll, and we'll pop over to the Discord server on the main Hangout, and we'll just paste that in there. Final poll results. Bosh. Oh, I put 2 in there. I didn't mean to. Just delete that one. There we go. So, final poll results then. This is how it ended up. Out of 70 of you who voted, which of these do you trust the least for accurate information? And the winner, or loser, is mainstream media at 64%. And second up on that was government announcements. So, yeah, man. 3% for social media platforms and 9% for influencers or independent voices. So, and most of those influencers or independent voices are on social media, but I understand what people are saying, because of course the individual influencers or thing can seem to be co-opted themselves and controlled opposition and agent provocateurs and all sorts. It's a jungle out there, right? But it's not a jungle in here because it's all beautifully organized in this Discord server. I spent a long time making it. Everyone else has spent even longer adding information to it and making it the knowledge base it's become. So thank you to everyone who's helped to do that. It's completely free to join. Links in the description below. Criminal not to. And in the meantime, I'm going to be coming back with a couple of shows over the next few days. Not sure what I'm doing tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. But I'll be about somewhere. I might be doing a behind the scenes video for the patrons and stuff, so we'll catch up. But if Sandy's still 3 times the lead, Sandy's still here. Little bit of a Sandy and do me a favor, Sandy and Chrissy, meet us up in the circus tent after, would you? That'd be cool if you can. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your birthday, Chrissy. I don't know what you got going on. I bought a book on it called How to Scam People Online. It's been 6 months. It still hasn't arrived yet. Amazing. I love it. Brand again. Classic. Classic. I love you guys. If my cards are playing right. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. I hope you've had a good night tonight. Thank you for your birthday wishes, everyone. Absolutely. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I'm not sure. I didn't even look at the chat tonight, really. I do apologise. I barely saw what was going on. I just have to hope that everybody enjoyed the show tonight. I do appreciate it's a bit of a big one. And there's a lot of stuff we were getting into. But yeah, like I say, we do this every Wednesday. And so please join us next Wednesday if you enjoyed it, and the other shows during the week. Don't forget, there's a whole bunch of videos on my channel to watch in the meantime if I'm not online tomorrow. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Birthday tent, what? But love to each and every one of you. It's been lovely to have you. Please hit the like button if you haven't done already, and it really does help the channel to do well. So hope you've enjoyed the show. I've been Drew, the Sigma Prepper. You've been a wonderful bunch. Thanks for all the super chatterers. Love, peace and progress. To the pack.
Reject the herd, prepare the pack. Click the like button, it's as easy as that. Check the description for the links you need. Follow my socials, subscribe to my feed. From a single lone woman to a family of 5. Learn from Sigma Prepper and see how you can thrive. We understand the risks that tomorrow could bring. We adapt and survive, it's a wolf pack thing. Reject the herd, prepare the pack. Click the like button, it's as easy as that. Check the description for the links you need. Follow my socials, subscribe to my feed.